Welcome to Escape Purgatory, a podcast where we rewatch Supernatural, then talk it through in the hopes that we can finally escape this show.
Join us each week, leave comments on upcoming episodes, and together we can escape Supernatural Purgatory. Or maybe...
with friends!
And about my brain hurts.
Mine too. There were moments in this that my brain was like, kaboom!
Yeah.
And a literal headache started. I was like, this is too much. This is too much. So we said with friends, we better introduce that we actually do have a friend on the podcast.
That's true.
Your imaginary friend.
What? I hear her voice now. So yes, we have Charlie back on with us.
Ooh.
Is this the first episode of season 4 you've been on?
It is, because I felt like I didn't want to overstay my welcome.
Oh no, that's
Rubbish.
impossible.
So I was like, I should ask for one for the season.
I mean, you chose a doozy. I was watching this earlier and I don't know how we're going to fit this all in. There's too much. There's just the foreshadowing.
Everything.
Even the title of this episode. Just even the title.
Always been the title. I kept pausing to write notes, and then I realized it had been like an hour and I wasn't a third of the way through the episode.
I know, I was doing the same thing and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna let it play, scribbled stuff down when I can, and just hope that like going through the transcript is gonna help.
Yeah, it's gonna help.
So yeah, we're talking about season 4, episode 18, The Monster at the End of This Book.
I can't with it. The foreshadowing, Annabelle.
I know.
Okay, so maybe before we even start, the monster in the room. You're watching this episode, and we are trying to evaluate whether Chuck was always Chuck, or
Yes.
whether Chuck was a writer. As Rob Benedict had said, he thought that he had just been a writer, and then at some point, spoilers, God replaced him. But I don't think so.
I thought that was the theory going in. After watching this, I'm like, no, there's no way. No. They might have just wanted to keep it from him that he was God, just because he might play it differently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a bigger reveal at the end. But no, there was just stuff in here that I was like, you can see the endgame Chuck in him.
So
still.
Do you think that the intention was always then for them to write Chuck as God later on? Do you think that was the intention rather than a prophet?
I do.
So
I do.
Okay, he's always been Kripke, right? We can get that out of the way.
Yes.
He's always been the writer. I think that the end of season 5 was always the intention.
Yeah.
I can't speak to 10 and 11 and 14 and 15, which we have feels that will come up, but I think the end of season 5 was always in the back of Kripke's mind.
Yeah.
Writing this.
I'm with Rob Benedict on, when they initially wrote Chuck, I think he was intended to be a prophet, which, yes, a Kripke analogue, but they magically wrote it in such a way, which they kind of sometimes, I say sometimes, they do a lot with Supernatural, that it works now and you can find a theory around it that Chuck was always God. It makes sense. Like, even the things he says in this episode, my personal theory, because we might as well just go because we don't know, is that, yeah, Chuck was always God, but he, for some reason, decided to basically mind wipe himself. Kind of, it's a terrible lifestyle, and then regains those later on. That's my
hot take.
That's my theory. He keeps his god powers because of the writing. I think that's what happened. I don't think he's aware of being God until later.
Okay, I disagree with you. I think some of this will come up. There's like 4 literary references in this episode. There's 5 literary references in this episode that'll come up and we'll maybe add into the discussion. But what drives me nuts is that we know Rob didn't know, because sometimes he's acting and okay, he doesn't know, and sometimes he just feels like the villain. He feels like he's manipulating someone else in the situation, and I don't know if it's direction or if it's editing, but I can't believe Rob didn't know, and it feels like he played that.
I wonder if they like maybe have hinted, not that he would be God, but that he wasn't always necessarily the good guy, because the good guys being like angels and everything aren't really any better than anybody else in this series. So like being a prophet doesn't necessarily make you a good person.
Yeah.
So he might have like in this version of Chuck, say he Rob did play him thinking he was completely a prophet, but he could still not have been a good person throughout his whole life, right?
I think it comes with the fact that I don't know if Chuck sees himself as a prophet for like a really long time in this episode and going on. He still sees himself as a creator. So he still thinks that he's responsible for what's happened to them. I mean, he is. But like, go with my like, wasn't aware he was God theory, he would still come across as like kind of a dick. Because he thinks he's created these bad situations.
He has these conversations with Sam, especially, where if you see him as Chuck the writer rather than as Chuck God, we need to like come up with code words. Then, you know, he's analyzing his character, and maybe, I don't know if Kripke's process involves talking to himself and talking to the character that he's his imaginary friends, Dean and Sam, but it's like a psychoanalyst session that he has with Sam.
Yeah. I mean, I love that it still it gets us to ask these questions later on. I don't know if this is one of the mysteries of Supernatural. Why are there mysteries?
There are many
that we're ever gonna solve.
Tell all book win.
Yeah.
With some of our theories, should we start getting into the episode and like see how they play out?
I don't even know how to interject in this. I've got so much to say. I'll just put my hand up. Let's do hands up.
There's so much.
One thing that I will say, I love the fact that there wasn't a recap in this.
Yes.
It felt like a completely new story, and it kind of is. So we get nothing. We just get like this man having flashes of Sam and Dean in situations. If you're watching this for the first time, you're like, who's this dude? I mean, going back to last week's episode with Sam having these weird dreams, and then we have this random dude having weird dreams about them too. You're like, what's going on here?
If it's the first time you're watching this episode, you would think he was one of the special children or the psychics.
Oh, that's true.
It was the same effects and sounds. And
That's very true. I didn't put those together.
There was our recap, though. We were just seeing Chuck's images.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think they were all from this episode.
They're flash forward recaps?
I have to address the elephant in the room and how attractive I find Rob Benedict.
Even as Chuck and even in this episode, huh?
Even as Chuck.
He's stumbling and drunk and...
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know. And that man just gets better with age, and I hope he never listens to this podcast because, yeah. I think the part of this is, and I said this at the end of the last episode, Rob Benedict was the very first actor from Supernatural that I got an autograph from and met. And he was so nice. So lovely. And yeah, I don't know, even in this episode, looking sickly in a dressing gown, don't know what it is.
You just like broken men apparently on TV.
I mean, we're watching Supernatural.
Exactly.
I say it now so I don't keep saying it through the episode, but just you need to know.
So you're going to keep saying it through the episode.
In special moments of the episode.
Yeah.
They go immediately from Chuck having visions to the first Easter egg of the episode. Did you notice that the Easter egg focus? And I went, okay, I have to look this up. I have to look up this comic book.
Okay, no, I didn't look up the comic books. I imagined that, like, Kripke had placed them there. You know, he is a bit of a comic nerd.
So the first one is called The Champions of Hell, #1, The Threshold. And it's a comic book series where a protagonist named Sam is convinced by a demon that he's the son of Satan. And he's expected to lead Hell's army against the army of heaven, and he has to stop the horsemen of the apocalypse. And there's something about being the sword of Satan and becoming an enemy of hell.
Yeah, he did that one on purpose.
Then he takes that issue away, and behind it is the second issue, where Sam agrees to become the champion of hell, realizes that's a mistake, and has to rebel against the devil.
Just laying out the plot of, like, up to the end of season 5. It's fine.
Yep. That was... So he read this and then was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to make this story happen too. With a brother.
Later on, he gets the power to resurrect the dead and meets the son of Satan.
What's the next episode again?
They didn't plan Jack, but when was that kid Jesse?
I mean, yeah. We'll get to Jesse.
He was not part of the plan. He was just like this cool one-off episode.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, that's very... that must have been Kripke. It couldn't have been anybody else, surely.
They knew where they were going with Sam in season 4, but did they already know where they were going with season 5?
This is my question, because I've been talking a lot about... or think... I don't know if I'm talking a lot about podcasts or just thinking it in my brain. Sometimes I can equate the two. But there's been a lot of build up to the fact that Dean needs to be possessed by Michael to the end of this apocalypse issue. So it's like, at what point, in what stages did we know where we were going with the final showdown kind of thing? I think...
It must be in the last episode, surely. When they introduced, like, higher ups.
Because I feel like there was a jump in lore from season 4 to season 5. But... I think it was always the plan. I think if you're watching it back now, there's too many references, like Zachariah in the last episode saying like, you'll do everything you're supposed to do to Dean. And it's like, what are all those things? I don't know. There's a lot. And you're right. I think it was planned out to the end of season 5 from the beginning of season 4.
I mean, there's only 4 episodes left in the season.
I know.
Yeah.
Look what you've done. Look at all you have accomplished. But so I'd imagine that even if they have no idea how they were going to get there, the wide strokes were already in place.
Yeah.
At least a little bit, and putting an Easter egg comic book doesn't actually marry you to doing anything.
True. Yeah, but then they're like, oh, but if people look back on this and we did manage to execute our plan, we're looking real smart right now.
Execute our plan. So if Chuck is Kripke, he's evil. He's he's conniving and planning a plan.
So yeah, they enter a comic book store. Sam and Dean introduce themselves as DeYoung and Shaw.
Members of the band Styx. And I think I've said this before on the podcast, but if I haven't, this is an actual plea to Jen Snackles himself. Can he please cover Man in the Wilderness by Styx? Because go and listen to that song. That is a Dean song that's never in the show. It's perfect. just go listen to it. This is my recommendation of the week. The first one I've ever made.
Okay, so we've established you don't want Rob to listen to this episode, but you do want Jensen to listen to this episode so that he can take the cover recommendation.
Yeah. It's a really
Would it
good
be
song.
worth it for Rob to listen to this episode if he then says, hey, Jensen, Amy has a really good point and you need to cover the Styx song?
Just need to ask you a few questions.
Notice anything strange in the building last couple of days?
They're asking ghost questions, which they never solved this case. They just completely forget that there was a ghost case in this town.
No, but are they only here because Chuck wrote them into this episode?
No, we can't do that. We cannot get into this because this is going to get way too much. Because, well, I mean, probably the answer is yes.
Because we never find out why they're originally here.
Yeah.
And somehow they end up at this comic shop.
The guy behind the counter is just sort of is kind of not convinced by their questioning, because Sam's questioning is very blunt and like it's like he's forgotten all his subtleties over the years. It's just like, what about noises skittering in the walls, like kind of like rats?
You guys are LARPing, aren't you?
Excuse me?
You're fans.
Fans of what?
Dean doesn't know what LARPing is, which I doubt that.
At the time, though, it was more obscure.
Yeah, I guess so. And he's not really an internet person.
He calls them hardcore, but they're just wearing suits.
Yeah, that's kind of... Sure, they're hardcore. Like, I'm pretty sure it's not that difficult.
But if they have all the knowledge and they're like...
They have the badges. He brings them the first issue of by Carver Edlund, who is a joke on 2 supernatural writers. But if he thinks they're LARPing, why does he show them the comic? We needed it. Plot device.
Well, so, I mean, at one point, I guess he's going to be like, oh, okay, they actually really don't know
what they're doing. Like...
I will say, I feel like they did Edlund dirty by giving him Carver's first name. I'm just putting it out.
Annabelle's taking shots early.
I would like to actually know why they chose Carver Edlund as the author's name. That would be quite an interesting question to ask that I don't think has ever been asked before. Like, why not Kripke?
It was a pretty meta and out there episode. So Edlund, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if he named him Kripke, it would just be too much.
I was thinking about this afterwards, and I was like, at the time of watching this, how many people were actually paying attention to who were the writers in the episodes? So by putting the names of 2 writers in and not Kripke, because I feel like people would know Kripke, especially since, you know, the end splash is Kripke Entertainment.
That's true.
It might be a bit too, like, also moments in this where it's a little bit of a slap in the face to, like, fans, right?
So maybe like Kripke was like, yeah, let's put other people's names on this.
Throw them under the bus.
He already put his name on the entire town.
That's true, because they do end up going to Kripke's Hollow.
Yeah.
But yeah. The front cover of the book is my favourite thing ever. They don't do romance novels like they do this anymore. Like the hand-painted...
Fabio.
The Fabio. I've always tried to figure out which one's Sam, which one's Dean, but I think I know now.
Why would it be difficult? Yeah.
I don't know why. They both have long hair.
No, they don't.
On the cover, right?
No, they don't.
Oh.
There's
imagine that.
like Viking or Norse god in the background, which I'm guessing is supposed to be, because he looks like Thor. Long blonde hair.
Yep.
Shirtless. And like the way he's holding the shotgun is kind of like, okay. And then Dean is presumably up front because they, you know, foreshortening, so they make him look taller. Has short hair and like a sleeveless black shirt, and I was just like, is this not homoerotica front cover?
I mean, apparently so.
They imply a few times that.
You can tell it's like self-published though, because like the way that the blurb's written on the back of the book is just like, there's nothing but this massive description.
I don't know if you've ever read any really bad pulp fiction. This looks like books I have had in my house, like really bad like 70s sci-fi kind of stuff, and the blurb on the back would be just as terrible. So I think I actually do, I'm going to give them that. I think they got the look of like old pulpy novels really down in this.
And then we get the title card, which is just like a montage of all the different, like, there was Scarecrow. I at first thought it was Bobby, but I think it's actually supposed to be the Benders.
Oh, yes, you're right, actually. I think you are right. Yeah.
And then it had some other monsters as well. And then it shows Supernatural by Carver Edlund.
There were probably sketches when they were creating all these monsters, but it doesn't look like those. It looks like they recreated all of this art from all of these first episodes in this style.
I love the art that the art department did this for us.
And I bet they had a blast.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. I'd like to see the full set, because I feel like at some point we see the full bookcase. So they had a book for each of these episodes that they did. Whether they had cover art for all of them is a different story.
I kind of get the sense that they weren't sure whether they wanted it to be romance novels and pulp fiction or comic books and manga.
Yeah.
Because they live in both worlds in different scenes. So after this, when we cut to Dean sprawled out on the bed in a hotel room, looking like he has torn through every single one of these books.
But like halfway through, like it gets to maybe like a scene that he doesn't particularly like.
Yeah.
And he's like, nope, no more.
Throws it down. F this. But there's this very famous, beloved full frontal line, and it always made no sense to me until like this month when I was watching it for doing this with you, and I realized that it's not a romance novel, it's a comic book, it's a manga. And then we never hear that again the whole rest of the series. I
always just thought they were describing his dick in prose.
Say spending a lot of time on the shape and heft of his...
Yeah.
All right, I got it. I always thought, too, that it was just like, oh, they're describing this scene. But when they cut to Kripke's house... I'm sorry, when they cut to Chuck's house in Kripke's Hollow...
Freudian.
They show the printer, and they have all of these pages that have been printed out, and that's why these romance novels are in a comic book shop.
Yeah, to be fair, right, so on the synopsis, because although I have the DVDs, I'm really lazy and I actually just watched this on Prime. But actually the synopsis of this episode says that they find out that their lives have been printed in comic books. That was the intention to start with. But then they decided to go, maybe it was too much work for the art department to do full comic books, them to flip through. So they kind of changed the idea to like a pulp novel. I don't know though, I kind of like the idea of the kind of like terrible horror novels more so than comic books.
But at the same time, when you're looking at these books, they are substantially thick for the episode.
Yeah.
Right? For me, it's implied that each book is just that one episode. I cannot imagine. I mean, unless Chuck... Well, we know Chuck's not a great writer.
But you know...
So he's like over-describing things.
That Chuck is obsessed with Dean. So, I mean, half of that book is just him describing his like freckles and eye colour. So, I mean, I fully believe they could be this thick for each episode if written by Chuck.
Sorry, what was thick? What were you describing?
So, I mean, Sam says like they're pretty obscure. Like no one's basically heard of these books. They started in 2005. There's no same time as the series. This is one question that never really gets answered. Why does the prophecy start when Sam and Dean are reunited at Stanford and not in their childhood?
Because that's when it started Supernatural.
I know that's the reason, but like, if we're going with the prophecy shtick...
Do you usually see the childhood of the prophets, not meaning people who wrote the books, but the people the books are about?
That they do... No, I guess not.
There's like one story about Moses and one midrash about Abraham.
Yeah. That's when it got exciting. Okay, fine. But I just feel like there should have been some kind of build-up. I don't know. It annoyed me at the time when I was watching this. I was like, why specifically that? Like, I know why, but like, also why?
Also, was this Kripke's idea or Ben Edlund's idea?
I don't know.
Well, so Julie Siege wrote this one.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
this
really?
is not even, so it's not even any of these writers that are who wrote this episode. Yeah.
I think they all probably had to take a step back from it and be like, look, we have this idea, but we need someone else to write this because we're going to go off.
That's when Ben Edlund starts writing an episode, though.
Yeah, no, this is not a Ben Edlund written episode. He hasn't got the credit for this, at least. It's, Julie Siege, who I don't think has written before for Supernatural. She has? Do you know which episode she did?
She wrote, actually, the last guest podcast we had. It's a Great Pumpkin.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Julie Siege maybe not getting enough credit from us.
Absolutely.
And she wrote Chris Angel's a Douchebag.
Oh, good. Okay. Yep, the Gay Magician episode. Cool. So they apparently wrote these books right up to No Rest for the Wicked, which is obviously the end of season 3, but nothing after Dean went to hell. Can you imagine?
Well, we talked about it.
Yeah, we did.
I reiterate, freaking insane.
And he's now looking up like the fan sites for these books. And he says there are actually fans, like not many of them, like sort of, jibing themselves with this.
Although for fans, they sure do complain a lot.
Yeah, right?
This is where I was like, what is this? What is this? It's the beginning of their contempt for the fans a little bit, right?
There or Kripke's?
Kripke's. Wow.
The writers and
The writers at the time.
I feel like there's a different relationship now that content creators have with their fans on TV and stuff. Like, I think if you look at how quite a good example is how you look at all the social media that they've done for The Boys, right? Is this real different experience now as to what it was back in the day, where I do feel like there was a lot of contempt. And I actually think there probably still is, but it's more well hidden because they know they have an online presence. Yeah. I mean, it can't be easy people critiquing your work, but at the same time, I'm going off on one now. People are entitled to their opinions on the stuff that you're showing on their TVs.
Yeah, the comment that he reads.
The demon storyline is trite, cliched, and overall craptastic.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was an actual review from somebody.
That's a live journal post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, critiquing a show generally means you care about it. I don't bother getting annoyed about stuff I don't care about. Right? If I am truly like, I don't like this, I really don't like, I don't understand it. Okay, like, for example, for me, Picard, terrible show. Absolutely despise it. Don't understand
We'll save the
it.
fight for after recording.
Don't understand how it fits into the Star Trek canon. People are free to change my mind. I absolutely love Star Trek. It's it's my favorite thing in the whole world. But I'm allowed to be kind of a little bit defensive of it, as long as I'm nice to people and I'm not going on the internet and being mean to people about it. It's in my own head, and my husband has to listen to it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of the things they're saying here. So Sam's like, keep reading, it gets better.
There's Sam girls and Dean girls.
Which, yeah, that's very true. Where are the Cass girls? Underrepresented.
Well, they're not. The books haven't been released yet.
Oh,
so
that's
of
true.
course.
There is no Cass in the Carl Redland
It's so
universe.
sad for them.
That's really sad for them.
I would love to see Dean's reaction to there being Cass girls.
Wait, how does that not come up in later interactions with these fans? I don't know when or if other books get published.
They do, because the 400th not 400th 300th episode, right? There's
Not
the
300th. That was the one with John.
200.
200.
Maybe one. The one with the convention.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, not the convention one. The school play one.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh,
because
you're
Cass is
right.
in that.
I'll just wait here. That is a song.
That's true. So there must be.
It probably goes through the end of season 5.
Yes. I feel like Becky confirms this later on. She says
Yeah.
something that confirms how far they got in Supernatural with the Carl Redland books, because there was a point that they stopped and then the fans started writing fan fiction about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In season 10, Dean's talking to Marie and tells her what happens, and she goes, "That is some of the worst fan fiction I've ever heard."
Yes, exactly. Oh, you're right though. Like this Dean, like season 4 Dean reacting to Cass in
That
the
would
book.
be amazing. Look, someone needs to write this and tag the Purgatory podcast.
Yeah. I've asked Meg for many fanfiction prompts, and I'm just saying, I haven't seen a lot, and I will read it and we'll comment on it, so, you know.
I like that Sam has already read and knows about all this, and he's just laying back and waiting for Dean to discover it so he can watch his reaction.
I mean, you would though, because it would be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's a slash fan?
I've never heard the term /fan. Clearly, not even in the old days of LiveJournal have I ever heard that term.
I always heard the term /fiction.
Yeah, /fiction is a thing. No.
I guess they didn't want to say what the.
But they say it outright. Oh, so what? So people can't search it?
Yeah, so I don't think they want to put in Winzest, right?
You're right.
I'm fine with them not actually saying that word.
Me too.
/fic is
Yeah.
a searchable term by itself.
Yeah, Sam clarifies about the Sam/Dean situation on the internet, and he's like, together. I feel like this is the only time that a TV show has ever addressed fiction, and I've been happy about it. Because whenever they do it otherwise, it's always terrible. But actually, I feel like this one is justified.
Well, yeah, because it's not a good fanfic to have. I'm sorry to the people who enjoy it, but it's weird. It's weird.
At some point, were they considering finding out that they weren't both John's children, and did they get rid of that because it would have justified that fiction?
What?
What Sam's big secret was going to be, and it turned out to be the demon blood.
Yeah.
There was a minute where they told JDM when he was whispering into Jensen's ear, filming the beginning of season 2, they told him various things to say, and one of them was, "Sam's not your brother."
Yeah. That's awesome. I didn't know that. Yeah, maybe that's why they dropped that. I mean, yeah, they do like kind of thoroughly condemn the Sam/Dean fiction in this show. It's outright. It's there.
Oh, come on. That's just sick.
You know me. I'm a live and let live kind of person, but I feel like the vitriol in the fan base makes you not able to be a live and let live person. You know?
So I wrote down the names of the 24 books.
Yeah.
John is not a feature in any of these.
Annabelle, I love you.
So Chuck replaced John
Yeah.
in these books, so John does not exist.
Oh my.
With Bobby.
Mate.
So John exists in the background, but he's never there, like the true absentee father in every single one of the things Kripke's written.
Yep.
I've also had this conversation recently. It's like, I feel like when you look at some of the writing in The Boys, and then you look at some of the writing in Supernatural, and you're like, maybe you should just like address the relationship you have with your father
And your wife.
outside of...
He likes to say that people are always asking, and his friends were asking him, and he's like, no, I had a very happy childhood.
Sure.
That's what he says.
Sure, man. Sure.
That's why there's a tag on the internet that says, Eric Kripke, go to therapy challenge.
He just wants to imagine the family drama. That's what it is.
Maybe he did have a happy, maybe he wanted an unhappy childhood to give him more flavour for some reason.
We gotta find this Carver Edlund.
They give up on their research at this point and say, we've got to find this Carver Edlund. And Sam explains that it's an alias, so no known address, taxes, blah, 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 blah. You know, they say, we've got to find them. Someone's got to know. They go to a publisher's house who published the Supernatural books. And they're meeting with the publisher, who we never get a name for.
She's prequel Becky.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
This could have been Becky, basically. They're almost the same character, but she's kind of a peppy goth. I kind of enjoyed her. So she's very much into the series. She's like, they never got the attention they deserve. They're really great books.
Nobody wants to read anymore is that romance crap. You know, Dr. Sexy MD.
Have they established that Dr. Sexy was a TV show
Not
at this
yet.
point? I mean, they're clearly just swinging at Grey's Anatomy there.
I think was their competing time slot.
Yeah, it was, and it started the same year too. They're there to revive the series. You know, they're going to write an article about it that's hopefully like gonna get more people involved in it.
She mocks Dr. Sexy, and I want to see Dean's reaction there. when they turn back to him, he's looking at Sam,
Yeah,
and I'm like, we were robbed.
yeah.
He's offended at her making fun of Dr. Sexy.
He has cowboy boots, and she's like, you know, she's all very like, yeah, if we can get a big bit of good publicity, then maybe we could start publishing again. And they're like, no. I love this publisher because she's us. She is
Yes.
us, right?
Yes.
Some of these things she said, I'm like, we've said
We've
this
said
on
it.
the podcast.
Yeah.
So she's like, Dean's so strong, so sad and brave.
The best parts are when they cry.
It's me.
So she's clearly a Dean girl.
She's clearly, yeah, 100% this woman is a Dean girl.
That's why we like her.
Yeah. She brings up Maddie in Heart and is like the first person that Sam loves since Jessica.
Which, that's a bit strong, isn't it?
I mean, they bring up Maddie a lot. They brought up Maddie a lot in season 4. The last episode, yeah.
She says her favorite one is when Dean went to hell, and Dean is visibly offended. But then she talks about Sam killing Madison, which was this crazy emotional moment, and there's just no visible reaction from Sam whatsoever.
Yeah.
He looks like he's getting bored.
And the last one she brings up is Dean ringing John in home.
I know!
I'm telling you though, I think someone watched Jensen act that scene and were like, TV gold. Like,
Give him all the awards.
all the awards. Where's this Emmy?
Is that the first time that Sam learns that Dean called John in home?
No, he found out the next episode.
Yes, you're right.
You're right.
You're right. She says, gosh, if only real men were so open and in touch with their feelings.
Is
Fair.
Dean offended that she's saying that they're not real men? Because you'd think he would be more offended that she's saying he's emotional and expresses his feelings.
I don't know. That line where he's like, real man, is it because he's like, is he worried now that he's fictional? Like, I don't know.
Not yet.
Yeah. I feel like there was no need to come back on that. And yeah.
How dare you say I'm a real man?
Yeah.
For all the trans Dean truthers out there, it should just be this moment of like, oh, she called me a real man.
Yes.
This is true.
Yes. It's so true.
I mean, no offense. How often do you cry like that?
There is a moment of introspection there. I can see it on their faces. And Dean just says, well, I'm crying on the inside.
We know this is true.
He is actually getting quite defensive because she's like, she doesn't understand why he's so suddenly really standoffish.
They're supposedly trying to get these books restarted, and he's like being so like not defensive, standoffish. Like
Yeah.
You would be.
Right?
yeah.
But this person's just like outright sort of, I don't know.
Knows all of your most emotional moments.
Yeah. Your
The
vulnerability.
past 4 years.
So I think you're right. I think these are comic books because he does talk about being full frontal in Route 666.
Yeah. But I said that's
So-
the dick prose. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I
Maybe
don't know.
it's an illustrated series. We can all be right.
Later on, it might be books, but they keep showing pages of the comic book, which is an issue later when he's writing out the details and like really focusing on what the words say, but none of those words would have actually made it into a comic book.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is, that's why I think it's prose.
Maybe there was a disagreement between the script and the art department. I don't know.
Just Ben Edlund and Kripke like having a tug of war over the script. That's how I see it. That's how I see every episode in season 4. Carver is trying to, but he's not really getting there.
So Dean is so standoffish that she ends up needing to give them the fandom quiz. Which
The gatekeeping quiz. I mean, who
Yeah.
hasn't been through this? I mean, I know I have. In this case, I feel it's justified because she wants them to write a positive article by people who are fans of the show, not just like random people who are finding these books somewhere and decided it'd be a cool thing of the week.
right. Not do you actually deserve to be at a convention?
Yeah, this is a different
Yeah.
type of gatekeeping. So she asks about the make and model of the car. I mean, come on. May 2nd is Sam's birthday. And like Dean feels like he has to fill in his birthday too. It's like, but mine's on January 24th. It's like, yeah, okay, Dean. She didn't ask.
It's not always about you.
I feel like she asked about Sam's birthday because that's a bit more obscure knowledge than Dean's birthday, because as we know, the skew of Dean girls to Sam girls, it swings in one direction.
Also, I don't know if they've ever actually said the date before, except that Mary died 6 months after Sam was born.
They have said Dean's before. It was on his FBI report, I think.
Well, he just needed to work in his wife's birthday.
I don't think like the general public would know that if you weren't like, let's look at this, let's pause the screen and look at this FBI report. Like, you know, the one where it says he's 6'4".
Chuck actually changed a lot of details going into the book, and it'd be very funny if some of the details that they knew were wrong
Yeah.
because they didn't make it in. Like, I want the model of the car to be different, actually. Like, he had to change it because it was too gay.
Like the original Ford Mustang that Kripke was going to write into. That would have been quite cool. Yeah. So they asked for Sam's score on the LSAT. And like, Sam doesn't know. To start with, he like looks at Dean like he's trying to remember, and he's like 174. Like he doesn't quite, but he looks at Dean like Dean knows, and you know Dean does know his LSAT
Yeah,
score.
of course
Yeah.
he knows.
Oh, he's so proud of his child.
Exactly.
So she asked Dean's favourite song, and he's like, it's a tie between Led Zeppelin's Ramble On and Travelling Riverside Blues. And so they want to know Carver Edlund's real name, and she's like, no. He's very private, like Salinger. And Sam's like, please. And they start to unbutton his shirt.
Never occurred to me.
Because she looks a bit taken aback. And I was like, oh yeah, right. There's this guy just unbuttoning his shirt in her office. Okay. He very reluctantly reveals his anti-possession tattoo. I like how when they do this, they always look away from the tattoo like they are ashamed. It's I know you can't see me, but it's this motion.
That's how they need to stretch so you can get that far.
Yeah.
You can't do an extra button. It would be too scandalous for television.
Well, that's the thing, because if you look at their original placement, it's not that high up. It's like right by their collarbone.
These move, right? They are the mystical travelling tattoos. These, I swear to you. And then, you know, Dean shows his too just to prove he's in the club. There was no need for him to do this, I feel.
But then
the lady is like, okay, yeah, fine. I'll tell you everything. I also have a tattoo on my butt. And shows them that as well.
But before she even says that, she's undoing her belt.
Yeah, she's ready.
Just dropping.
I mean, to be fair to her, this is canonically a very small fan base. I feel you would be extremely excited to meet other Supernatural fans in the wild and show them your butt tattoo. She's already shown that butt to get the tattoo, so...
It's true. For a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that now it's more common, but at the time, tattoos were not nearly as common, and getting fan tattoos was certainly not nearly as common.
I wonder who was the first fan to get the anti-possession symbol, because there must have been someone who was the first, and I wonder if they know they have that claim to fame. I want them to
have been like the day after the episode aired.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Like cast fiction. Okay, so at the time, it being way less common that you have a tattoo of your fandom, at least in media, if you had that, it was evidence of being like a stalker, being obsessive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, oh, well, now that I know that you're obsessed and a stalker, I'll just give you his address.
That's true.
That's how it's presented.
Yeah. I mean, they have their fake IDs. It says they're journalists. Surely it's fine, right?
Like, he never even gives out his name, but I won't call him. I'll just send you right over.
Yeah. Let's just dox Chuck Shirley.
Yeah,
like, fine. We go to Chuck's house and we see him inside. And it's printing pages and pages. We see Chuck, he's wearing like boxers and a shirt with a... I call it a dressing gown. This might be a British thing. It's bathrobe, an Americanism. I've never called anything a bathrobe.
But we see him walk in his boxers while we hear her call him a genius.
That's true. I mean, he's woman having a breakdown in a Lifetime movie.
The only thing that's missing is that instead of drinking whiskey, which he does in this, he should be drinking gin. Because everybody knows that's the breakdown drink.
That's the breakdown
I
drink.
did not.
Yeah. I mean, if you've ever did you watch the chess one, the Netflix chess thing?
Yes.
Yeah. When she's having like a breakdown in that, but she's kind of like just dressed in her underwear and like a dressing gown, just like still looking real glam. This is this.
Glam is a relative term.
It's fine. So
we already know your opinion is skewed.
She says his name is Chuck Shirley and he's a genius, so don't piss him off.
yeah.
So, did Chuck write this? Does he think he's a genius? And what happens if you piss Chuck off in season 4?
Oh my god, he did write this.
Sam and Dean approached the rundown.
Like, surely he must know that's his own house. Like, why would you describe it that way? Oh, and then he changes it to ramshackle instead, which is worse, I guess. And says, do they really want to learn the secrets that lay beyond that door?
No. Keep running, guys.
They stop in front of his door and like look at each other, and his Chuck's voiceover is that they shared soulful looks.
And then they just trade a perfectly like bored look. It's not so cool whatsoever.
So it's giving us an idea of the embellishment that Chuck gives to his prophecies, right? So
With determination, Dean pushed the doorbell with forceful determination.
yeah, I love Chuck. He's not a good writer. So the doorbell rings and he gets up and he looks real worried. I mean, he knows who it is, surely.
So is Chuck a good actor? Because sometimes in the show he's a bad actor.
I think Chuck...
He's also a bad actor.
It depends whether or not Chuck knows he's God. If he knows he's God, he's a very good actor. If he doesn't know he's God... I mean, he's still acting here because he knows who they are. I mean,
If he's not God, he doesn't know who they are. But if he is God, he's a good actor here and a bad actor later.
but he knows who they are because he's just written that they're outside his house. Surely he must recognize his own house from his visions.
You would think so.
He knows it's
Shirley?
his house. He doesn't know it's his
Shirley wrote
character.
supernatural books.
I'm
the writer.
so confused
Why?
by this. This is why my brain
I'm
hurts.
Dean, this is
Because
Sam.
He should know that
Sam
Sam
you've
and
been
Dean are
writing
going to
about.
turn up at his door. Oh, but he wasn't then expecting it to actually happen. Okay, no, it's fine. My brain realised.
Yeah, okay, I get that now too. Because I was like, yeah, but he's no, this is gonna. Yeah, no, he doesn't know it's actually happening.
It's like
If
you.
he's just
It's just that
writer.
it happens at the same time. Also,
Yeah.
later in the episode, things don't happen at the same time. That doesn't matter too much.
But narratively, it makes sense at this point. Sam and Dean are there outside, and Dean says, "I'm Dean. This is Sam. The Dean and Sam you've been writing about." And Chuck just closes the door on them.
Calls the police.
Dean rings the bell again, and Chuck opens the door again. Like, who do you think it's gonna be, man?
Especially since it's like frosted glass, so you can still see their outline.
He thinks they're fans. He says, like, I appreciate your enthusiasm. It's always nice to hear from fans, but for your own good, I strongly suggest you get a life. And then tries to shut the door, but Dean shoves his foot in the way. And he says, here's the thing. We have a life. You've been using it to write your books.
He says, is this a misery thing?
Oh,
Which is a novel and a movie where a deranged fan kidnaps a writer and forces
I know.
them to write a sequel.
I've never seen the movie, but I have read the book.
So clearly a lot of fans wanted him to get Dean out of hell.
Maybe it should have been a misery thing.
Oh, no.
Think about what would have happened if they just offed God now. Anyway, I mean, an archangel would have shown up. So yeah, they kind of shove him around. He's like, this, it's not funny, and Dean's like, damn straight, it's not funny. He's like real angry, and Sam says, I am Sam, that's Dean. They just keep repeating themselves. And Chuck says, like, Sam and Dean are fictional characters. I made them up. They're not real. So they take him outside and show him all their guns.
I don't know why that would be convincing.
Right, how else would you get them to calm down?
He's just said, like, are you going to kidnap and torture me? And they're like, no. Come out and look at our trunk. It's just full of guns.
He starts with, that's real rock salt. Like, that would have been the thing that would have been fake.
That's so true. Like,
Things he picks out, you're right. It's like, this is real rock salt. These are real fake IDs. Like, not your grenade launcher. This is a real grenade launcher. Get out Big Bertha.
You have to imagine that there's a moment on the way outside where he tries to close the door and lock them out.
You'd hope so.
well, so obviously Dean's leading the charge, right? He goes out the door front. Sam's behind Chuck and is just like pushing him out the door. Surely,
I mean, if he wanted to, Sam could just pick him up. Just
Like a
pick him up,
baby.
little legs dangling. Yeah.
I honestly thought that was what they were gonna do in this later on in the episode.
That they never actually like bodily pick Chuck up is an absolute crime on this show.
Rowena should.
Right, yeah, Rowena could have carried him like bridal style. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Manhandling God, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Look, maybe if Dean had carried Chuck bridal style just one time, maybe the apocalypse wouldn't have happened. That's all I'm saying.
That's true.
Yeah.
God would have felt a little bit of love.
Yeah.
That's all he wanted.
He would have got what he wanted out of the situation, and they could have got on with their lives.
It is a misery thing. The entire series is happening because he's obsessed with Dean and wants more story.
It's so true. Yeah.
It's just the reverse.
He's literally holding them hostage in their own narrative.
This is some kind of joke, right? Did Phil put you up to this?
The Phil reference must be Phil Segrisha. Mm-hmm.
That's what I was thinking.
The
yeah.
only person I could think of that would be. And then Dean finally says, well, nice to meet you. I'm Dean Winchester, and this is my brother Sam. And that's the thing that finally convinces him.
Last names were never in the books. I never told anybody about that. I never even wrote that down.
I think it's the indecisive thing. I think he just never wanted to put in the book what it was.
At some point, he must have, because when we get to season 15, he talks about a grave that just says Winchester.
Yes.
Becky definitely reacts to that.
I reckon Cass did the reveal. I'm just going to say it. Plus, we've got Anna. No, it could have been Anna because she has that line that says, Dean Winchester is saved.
I like that. That's my new headcanon.
So we go back into Chuck's house. He's drinking a large whiskey and turns around and then he's like, oh, you're still here.
What? Why would taking a drink disperse the hallucinations?
Chuck says, "You're not a hallucination." And he's like, "Nope." And he said, "Well, there's only one explanation."
Obviously, I'm a god.
And they do the full Easter egg zoom in filter. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah, the foreshadowing. There's a lot in this episode. You can't really get away from this one.
This is the moment. If they had backed up and it had just been the same shot as everything else, it would have just been this funny moment it was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. But they zoomed in to the same way that like clued me in that I needed to look up the comic from the beginning of the episode. Yeah. So to me, this is the point. Chuck was always God. This is a point in that column.
It makes sense. Like, yeah, I'll go with you on that because I add this like, this is the moment. My argument for that, I'm going to play devil's advocate throughout this, is that we don't know what he is, but obviously he's something. It's because it hasn't been revealed he's a prophet yet. So I'm guessing they're posing this as one of the explanations that he's some kind of deity. Because we haven't seen God yet. We've seen angels. They've referred to God many times. So they could just be... This is the thing, right? Because it's funny. If they hadn't wrote it, we're like, oh, we're playing that he could be God, but he's not really, guys. But then he ends up being God anyway. So it's like...
That's not even the part that drives me insane now. It's the full speech.
Yeah. So Sam says to him, like, you're not a god. And Chuck says, well, how else do you explain it? I write things and they come to life. Yeah, no, I'm definitely a god. A cruel, cruel, capricious god. The things I put you through. The physical beatings alone. I killed your father, I burned your mother alive, and then you had to go through the whole horrific deal again with Jessica. All for what? For the sake of literary symmetry?
I toyed with your lives, your emotions for entertainment.
That's it. That's the show.
yeah, right.
That's the overarching plot of the series.
This is the show.
The line comes back in 1420. It goes, "You're my favorite show."
Ooh. The foreshadowing as well, like 1590, the physical beatings alone.
My friend, why would you do this? I don't even think of that. He lays out so much that he didn't. For me, actually, it's the literary symmetry thing. Because, yeah, we know this, and Chuck does like confirm this later on, that he's trying to basically relive that high he got from Cain and Abel. So he's trying out the whole like symmetry thing. Like it kind of worked out. I don't know.
But the literary symmetry hasn't even been laid on at this point, like it will later. Everything that Chuck says here, that Chuck is blaming himself for here, in like season 11, Dean will blame Chuck for.
Yeah.
And Chuck will say like, no, you can't, you don't get to blame me for any of that. Mm-hmm. But the thing that really kills me watching this episode is the literary symmetry line. Literally, the narrative symmetry for the end of the show wrote itself. It was perfectly set up narrative symmetry. It was all lined up. The dominoes were all there. All he had to do was knock it down. And I'm sorry, I will stop. But no finale truthing. No finale truthing on podcast.
Were they not able to knock down that final domino because Chuck wasn't Chuck anymore? The literary symmetry had gone because he was no longer in power.
No, because literary symmetry was defying the narrative and getting rid of Chuck.
Yeah.
And Dean rescuing Cass from the empty rather than Cass rescuing Dean from hell.
There's definitely not a moment in this episode that mirrors that also.
Not at all. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what possibly you're talking about. He goes on to say, did you really have to live through bugs and the ghost ship? I forgot how bad the ghost ship was, actually. I always do forget that's one of the like worst episodes. Red Sky in the Morning is not a great episode.
It's not a great episode, but it's not as bad as Bugs.
There are worse episodes.
Yeah.
Than a Bella heavy episode.
Yeah, there could have been another one. He could have mentioned the racist truck. I mean...
Yeah, right? That was
But it already got to mention this episode.
That's true.
I am so sorry. I mean, horror is one thing, but to be forced to live bad writing.
Self-owned now, Crookie, but okay.
Why is Chuck more willing to accept that he's God than that he's a psychic?
I feel like that just comes with writer territory, the ego.
Right, because it would mean that he's not a writer. He's just being dictated to.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely his ego. I mean, just imagine Kripke saying this moment, what is a writer if not a god?
No, but imagine, okay, if Chuck is just the writer and just a prophet, he's getting the story downloaded into his head and translated into words, and he calls that process bad writing. So the only part that he's having a hand in whatsoever, he thinks he's doing very badly, which, to be fair, is what writers act like.
Yeah, it's true.
Everyone thinks their own stuff's bad.
It's the incredible ego of it all, and also, like, I'm the worst at this.
Chuck, you're not a god.
We think you're probably just psychic.
Which makes sense. They have had more dealings with psychics than they have gods, although they have had dealings with gods, so, you know, it's not off the table. They know there is, like, a biblical god because the angels have mentioned them. But
Multiple times.
yeah, multiple times.
Are you working on anything right now?
Chuck picks up his latest work and says it's kind of weird, though. He says it's very Vonnegut. And Dean leans in and says,
Slaughterhouse-5 Vonnegut or Cat's Cradle Vonnegut?
Sam's surprised. This goes with his, so that's the Siren episode where,
Yes.
yeah, and Dean's like in the Odyssey, and Sam's like, what? He's like, I read. No, Chuck explains it's more like Kilgore Trout Vonnegut because he wrote himself into it. I wrote myself at my house confronted by my characters.
Okay, so Slaughterhouse-5 is completely autobiographical with an unreliable narrator.
Yes.
Cat's Cradle is the concept of free will versus fate and a satire of religion and the apocalypse. Again, with an unreliable narrator. And he says, no, it's more like Kilgore Trout, which is from Breakfast of Champions, where Vonnegut wrote himself into a book and being confronted by his own recurring character.
When do you think Dean started reading Vonnegut?
Early.
Do you think, well, I was thinking post or pre-Hell?
Post.
Yeah.
Uh,
We can just sit with that one.
Because, I mean, we've always known his, like, dealings with fate and stuff. Like, it's been there for, I would say, it's from the very beginning. He's never really believed in destiny, and he's just found fiction to support his worldview.
Yes, I agree with you.
Is this episode actually a little bit more Cat's Cradle? Because I haven't read the books, but I've just read a little bit about them. I'm not as well read as Dean. But the narrator looks back after the events of the books, and the narrator is telling you that all of the events of the book are caused by fate. Mm-hmm. But it's a question, and the only evidence is that the narrator said so. The book doesn't give any evidence that it wasn't, a coincidence. Is fate a lie that humans tell themselves to make their lives okay? Or is there a predetermined fate that works against your own free will? That's the episode.
I mean, I've not read Cat's Cradle, but I have read Slaughterhouse-5. Mm-hmm. And Slaughterhouse-5 is a very strange book. It's all about, I've always read it as also almost like a commentary on PTSD, as well as like this exactly the same thing. So the idea is that this guy, he saw a lot of terrible things during the war, but throughout his life he gets abducted by aliens who tell him that time is a... Yes, see? You need to read Slaughterhouse. This is what really like, this is what always gets me when they're like, Dean's read Slaughterhouse-5 and it's all about this, and I'm like, okay, go and read it, it's wild. So throughout this guy's life, he gets abducted by aliens and relives other parts of his life. These aliens don't experience time as linear, but all of the things that are going to happen are going to happen. It's the same fate. Vonnegut has a thing about fate.
Okay, so if the angels are the aliens.
Yes.
And it's actually about Vonnegut's time as a prisoner of war, right? So it supports the Chuck filter, right? Because it's all a fudged version of Vonnegut's life that is made more fantastical.
Yeah. So it's I find the book very confusing. I think it's quite a difficult read, to be honest. But yeah, he's kind of explaining how, like, the aliens explain to him how they have seen the whole of time and they exist in the whole of time and are stuck in that kind of thing. But they keep taking him out from the moments of his life because they don't experience it as linear. So they drag him from points. So he kind of almost has like a dissociation moments in his life. So the book's all jumbled up as to him living with his wife in the like post-war, to like actually having to experience it and then jumping back and forth. Like because they keep dragging him out, he's not then experiencing his own life as linear. Which I think goes into the autobiographical stuff, but to me that's always been like a commentary on PTSD more so than maybe being stuck in fate. So, just to bring it right down.
No, I
Well, we all know that
appreciate this.
Dean is in that situation.
But these books do make sense, you're right, with Dean's experience, because they're all about fate, they're all about destiny, they're all about how you experience your life and what you can control about it and what you can't control about it, which is why it's really interesting that he's like a big Vonnegut fan.
So to me, it's a lie. It's not Slaughterhouse-Five and not Cat's Cradle, and it's actually Kegel Trout. It's actually all three.
It's all of those things. Basically, Chuck is Vonnegut.
Wait.
Or is Dean Vonnegut?
Oh.
Do you think Chuck wants to see himself in Dean? Not like that, Amy. Calm yourself down.
Lost Amy. She's
Calm
down.
yourself.
Yes. I mean, we also kind of know that's true because when we find out about the darkness, that's his sister, right? They have the same kind of fraught relationship that Sam and Dean have. So yeah, I think Chuck sees himself in Dean.
But I always thought that originally Sam was supposed to be Cookie's insert. And
Maybe he was until Dean became more popular.
maybe he was. I always thought Dean was really supposed to be the men that Kripke did not like, at least at first. The womanizer who all the women are attracted to, whereas Sam was the good one and only coming on to women who are coming on to him first, and
Yeah.
the nice guy syndrome.
Originally, yeah, it's very much like George Lucas and Luke Skywalker, right? Luke Skywalker is also a self-insert character, so it makes sense that Sam would be. Because if we've learned anything, this is Star Wars.
So two things we're keeping track of. Is Chuck God? And fate versus free will.
Yeah, I'm still convinced on the Chuck is God thing. At this point, I think that he knows. I think he is, but he doesn't know. But that's just me.
That's very Doctor Who.
He's put himself in a watch. There's a watch somewhere in the house. That's a Doctor Who reference.
Yes.
So we get to see them do something that me and Annabelle have been talking about, and I know this happened at some point, and they go to the laundromat.
Yeah.
This came definitely from fan comments. I know that people were like, we want more stuff with them doing domestic things together and not just fighting. We want their conversations. We want to see them, doing stuff like laundry. And lo and behold, they're doing laundry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just having a scene from season 15 play in my head as you're talking.
Oh, no. Oh, I was thinking the other one, but. Yeah.
Oh, I was just talking about her saying that fans want to see them do laundry.
That's true. Yes.
At one level.
I was thinking about Sam doing laundry in 1520. It's ruined for me now.
Oh no! I
know. Yeah, you're right. Becky just wants to see them do laundry, and I mean, people. If Chuck ever published this book, they got to see
Would have
that.
gotten it. Yeah.
Sam is doing the laundry, and Dean is reading Chuck's pages that he sent them, and his brain hurts as much as ours does.
I'm sitting in a laundromat reading about myself, sitting in a laundromat reading about myself. My head hurts.
If you just found out that your entire life was coming through some guy's head, that he was writing your life,
Yeah.
and either you're living his writing or he's seeing your entire life, I don't care how dirty your clothes are, you're not doing laundry right now.
Right.
Well, he hasn't read this part yet, right? So he's probably just turned to the page and they're already in the laundromat. So like your stuff is already in the well.
He has to be there because they're in the laundromat in the pages that he's reading.
Right, he couldn't have read it before he got there, except all of the other times.
Yeah. I'm just saying, the normal place to have an existential crisis is in your car. So, why is he not
true.
there?
I don't know, I've had one in a laundromat.
But for them, for Sam and Dean.
For Sam. Dean reads it and he's like, Sam's tossed his gigantic darks into the machine. He was starting to have doubts about Chuck, about whether he was telling the whole truth. And Sam's like, stop it.
Stop it, Sam said. Guess what you do next? Sam turned his back on Dean, his face brooding and pensive.
It also does tell us in this that they can read each other's thoughts through these manuscripts.
We can also read each other's thoughts through their brooding and pensive shoulders.
Yes.
I can't see your face, but those are definitely your brooding and pensive shoulders.
Like, because he says to Sam,
You just thought I was a dick.
I'm just saying, like, if I had access to this information about a sibling, I would 100% use it to my advantage all of the time. Why are they not constantly flicking through this and being like, hey, you thought I was a dick again, like 2 years ago when we were hunting that ghost. Like, I'm gonna get you back for that.
But you're making me realize any time throughout season 5, the classic Winchester secret keeping, they could go pick up the book and find out. I guess they can't pick up the book, but they could call Chuck for the manuscript and find out what secret Sam was keeping. No, because in this we learn it's not written in.
Yeah. What else does Chuck leave out of the books, though? Because, I mean, there would have been... You know that really famous scene of Dean and Cass staring at each other in the junkyard, and there's that really slow zoom out of the camera? Like, I would have liked to have seen that in this format. Like, the thoughts. And whether or not Chuck would have left it in. Do you think Chuck left Destiel in his narrative in Supernatural?
Yes, because Charlie read it. Not me, Charlie. Felicia Day, Charlie.
I don't know though, because this is my thing. Chuck's supposed to be the writers of the show, so would it have always just been still subtext, even in the books? Oh my god, my brain!
Right, but
in the book,
but gays can read subtext, and therefore Charlie understood it.
Yeah, Charlie gets it.
For people who are not in my brain, because at some point Charlie mispronounces Castiel, and I'll never forgive it. But just what about Castiel? He seems helpful and dreamy, and I think she canonically has a parasocial relationship with Cass. Like, she goes up and hugs him the first time that they meet. Like, she knows every detail about them. What characters do you think have read the books?
See, I don't think Dean would have read any more other than this episode, because I think it would freak him out too much.
I think Sam would, just to be like, what is this crazy guy writing now? Just to like check in.
I don't think Rowena knows about them, but she would have read them if she did.
You're right. She can't know about them. It's important. Crowley, the second he found out about the books, would have read every single one.
He's like, what does Dean think about me?
And then he has to read about all of that eye-gazing between Dean and Castiel.
Yeah.
Well, and we definitely know that Cass has read them because he says, I admire your work.
Yes.
So Cass has actually read them.
Again, kicky feet on the bed with the fluffy slippers. Today, me and Dean, we saved a prophet.
Okay, but there's a post somewhere, and if I can't find it, I'll remake it for you. That's just next to each other. Dean saying, I'm full frontal in here, man. And Castiel saying, Chuck, I'm an admirer of your work. Which works on 2 levels.
Yes, I thought that too when he said that in this. I was like, only Dean's in that room. So we cut from the laundromat back to Chuck, and he is sleeping at his desk, but he is having a vision. It looks very painful, like he's having to like forcing the vision. He sees Sam with a blonde woman. She sits and pats the bed, and he goes over to her, but then her eyes turn white. So, oh my god, it's Lilith! Oh my god!
Mm-hmm.
Who is this for?
For us, the viewer.
Right.
Is Lilith wearing something different in this vision? I feel like she's wearing a dress.
I feel like she is, yeah. That's just a continuity error. They definitely didn't mean to do that. Right? Or
I don't know.
But is Chuck imagining it happening, so it's going to happen?
And then editing his work?
Yeah, so maybe in his imagining, she was wearing something more, like, sexy than what she's wearing in the real thing.
You know, they we're getting really into the episode, but, like, they start to do things opposite to what they think is supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. So... and then things change around them to make it happen.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's a little bit like that. Had they followed the script exact, she would have come in a different outfit. I could also be making all of this up because, like I said, I don't remember. She might be just wearing the same thing, but I just don't remember. But I swear it was different.
Yeah.
No, it's very interesting because I read it the opposite way. I read it like a Greek tragedy where everything happens because they knew about the prophecy and were trying to work against it.
Yeah, there's no escaping the narrative, right? So in the act of trying to escape, you are still living the narrative. Because that's already written into the narrative.
Right.
Brain.
But yeah, I mean, it could be a butterfly effect thing.
Yeah. I don't know.
We need to check her outfit.
I was wrong. It is the same outfit.
All right, fine.
As much as that was a fun
Thanks for
philosophical
But we made such good
wormhole.
points, yeah.
We can talk about it
Keep
more.
the points.
Yeah, we'll make the same points later.
Yeah, I mean that's the summary of the episode, though, isn't it? Really.
That's true.
So it cuts to, I'm assuming the next day. Sam and Dean are now back with Chuck, and he's sort of very anxious, and he's holding some new pages. Chuck has now written another chapter. Chuck's kind of like more distressed.
This is all so much easier before you were real.
And Chuck is like putting it off. He doesn't want to tell them. And Dean's like, well, I didn't like hell. So like...
And that's your fault, personally.
Yeah, exactly. You can like not like telling us something, but I was in hell, so my experience trumps yours.
Suck it up, man.
Yeah, exactly. And he tells them that Lilith is coming for Sam, and it's going to be tonight, and she's just going to show up. And he then reads the manuscript.
Lilith patted the bed seductively.
He's now decided to write it this way.
Yeah, right.
Right? You're correct.
Yeah, exactly. Because then he says, unable to deny his desire, which he already knows there's secrets being kept between them.
Yeah. Yeah. Fanning those flames.
Yeah.
Sam doesn't have that kind of desire. He might have a desire to kill her.
Well, no, exactly. But he chose to write that Sam has some kind of desire. It's just causing friction between Sam and Dean, thinking that Sam's keeping more stuff from him.
And why would Chuck want that unless he was already gone?
Yeah. Add your tally into your column.
No, we just had the other one though because he had the premonition, and that all doesn't make sense unless he is just a writer. So we're tallying both columns. It's fine.
Unable to deny his desire, Sam succumbed, and they sank into the throes of fiery demonic passion.
The thing is, Dean is thinking about that time Sam very much in detail told him about the sex with Ruby. And he's like, oh, I already know too much about the fiery demonic passion, like...
Do you know what's even crazier, though? Because at this point, Chuck hasn't described what Lilith looks like.
Yeah.
So he's having demonic passions with a child
Annabelle,
in their minds right now.
No.
I hate it. You've done your job.
Yeah, because you're right, because Dean asks,
I'd like to think that's an accident because you can see on screen that that's not what's being discussed.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine. We saw the vision. We know what Lilith looks like.
So that's why they showed it. Because if they just put this line in, everybody would be like, whoa!
That's true. We needed the vision.
Sam questions this fiery demonic passion, and Chuck's like, oh, it's just a first draft. Like, I just wrote it. And then Dean points out, Lilith is a little girl. But Chuck clarifies that actually, no, she's a dental hygienist from Indiana.
Comely dental hygienist.
I hate that.
If someone can never refer to me as comely in my whole life, I'd be happy, actually. Thanks.
Also, she's not at all.
She's not. It means a very well-rounded lady. Where are the curves?
It's so interesting because that's never the impression I'm given of that word. And now I'm thinking we need to take it back as a society.
I always thought of comely as like milkmaid. And milkmaids to me in man speak is like nice big hips.
Soft.
Boobs. Soft lady. Yeah.
Not that pretty is how it's always used.
How
unfortunately.
Odin describes women in American Gods.
So Dean asks, how does this whole psychic thing of yours work? And Chuck goes, do you mean my process?
He really doesn't like being called a psychic, does he?
No. He doesn't believe he's a psychic because, like we said, then he has no hand in what he's doing.
Yeah.
So he doesn't like it, so therefore he writes Cass in to correct the...
Oh, no, Bray.
I'm mostly joking, but I'm also torturing Amy for fun.
No, though. Okay, no, I've
Go
had a
on.
moment. I've had a brain moment. I mean, maybe I should bring this up later. No, I'll do it now because otherwise I'll forget. In the act of writing himself a prophet, did he make it true?
No, because he's outside of the narrative.
No, Chuck's not outside the narrative.
So this is your how the Doctor Who theory can still win.
Yeah.
You're saying he accidentally wrote himself into the narrative, thereby making him forget that he was in control of the narrative?
Because he wrote that he's a prophet, so he is one because the things that he writes are true.
So then where are the visions coming from?
Well, they're coming
Himself.
from him
Yeah.
because he wrote that he has visions.
Oh, you know what?
I
You're
don't like
probably
it.
right. You're
It's a
probably
circle.
right.
No.
But like, how does he get out of that though?
I mean, you could just write that you are God in the end, and then that
But
would be true.
He already has written that he's God.
Yeah.
Was Chuck not God until he wrote that he was God? Is he the kid from Good Omens and also later in this own series?
Okay, right, hear me out. Chuck wrote himself a prophet, so he is one. But later he thought that was kind of lame and decided that he should write, oh, actually, maybe I was the biblical God all along. But because what he writes is true, he then does become God because he wrote it.
Are you saying that Chuck is Adam and he's pre-written the sequel to Good Omens?
Yeah, he's writing his own. So he is God, but he's only God because he wrote that he's God. Circular.
Yeah.
I'm not on board, but I am happy to ride along and have you convince me.
I love that theory. I think that's great. I think that's absolutely great.
It's like the if you've watched the latest thing at the Umbrella Academy, right? It's like the grandfather paradox. You can't go back in time and kill your own grandfather because then you create a paradox, right? Mm-hmm. But it's that, but the opposite. He's created himself in an infinite time loop. Yeah.
Of creating himself?
Yeah.
So Chuck was the Antichrist and then became God?
No, here we... Alright, I'll explain once more. Chuck is God at the beginning of time. He was going along, blah, blah, blah. Decided at some point to become a writer, to write the Dean and Sam story.
And Mary Sue himself.
Yeah, Mary Sue himself. But in the process of doing that, he wrote to explain why he could do that as a self-insert character, that he was a prophet. So he became one because that's how he wrote it. But then
Became John Smith.
Yeah, became Chuck Shirley. And then later on down the line, he wrote that he was God, so he reverted back to God because he wrote it.
So this is your completed theory of why in this episode, according to you, Chuck does not know he's God.
Yes, and why it becomes a big reveal because he almost like reveals it to himself.
And then at the end of the episode, the framing of the episode, who is framing that?
So by the end of this episode, Chuck is a prophet with no knowledge that he's God, because that's how it's written. No one has to be on board.
But in this episode, he's written that he's you mean he's later on he writes
Yeah,
himself
later
being
on.
God again.
Yeah, it has to be later on. When he does, it has to be before he does the reveal.
It has to be before Swan Song.
It has to be, yeah.
No, because that's not in the narrative.
You don't know. You haven't read the Supernatural books, and neither have I. You don't know when Chuck was revealed to be God in the Supernatural books.
We do know that there's scenes in between.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 4 versions of all events, right? There's quote unquote the truth.
Yeah.
There's what's in the show. Mm-hmm. There's what's in the books.
Yeah.
And then there's the ghost phaser effect.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's 4 versions of the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that are in the show but not the books, and there's things that are in the books but not the show.
Yeah, definitely. And the laundromat was an example because Sam we didn't hear Sam think that Dean was a dick. We only knew that because he was reading it from the book, so we know there's different narrative. Anyway.
No, but that did happen.
But it did then happen because it was written out. See?
It happened in the show too, because otherwise Dean couldn't have called it out. It happened in the show. We just can't hear
my
it.
theory.
I really like that theory a lot, though.
I've watched too much Star Trek.
So in clarifying his process, he says it usually starts with a headache, a really bad headache. Aspirin doesn't work, so I drink. He's again being Dean at this point.
Yeah.
Until he falls asleep. The first time it happened, I thought I had a crazy dream.
It keeps flowing and he can't stop it. So Chuck has Winchester derangement syndrome and he can't stop working on his 500k fig on AO3.
Yeah. That's... Yeah.
Exactly. Chuck holds out the manuscript towards Dean, and Dean's like, oh, we'll just, since you have it, let's just read it. And he's like...
You knew you were gonna ask for that. Yeah.
Dean asking for his own narrative and getting handed it by God/Chuck? What's this symbolism? I'm going to stop because it's making my own
Don't
brain
stop.
hurt.
That's why we're here. Don't stop, Amy.
Chuck is really manipulative, right?
Yes,
because
he
he's not
is.
giving them all the details. Because they're now on the road, and Dean's driving, and Sam's reading through the manuscript or the chapter, and he just reads. Well, okay, we don't actually know how much is in there because Sam reads an excerpt that says the minivan accident wasn't that bad, but Dean was still seeing stars.
He scratched absently at the pink flower band-aids on his face.
At this point, Dean's not having a big enough crisis. I guess it's so that they can ramp up later.
Yeah.
It's just like he's accepting all of this way too easily and not yet thinking about the implications, and that's not Dean.
Yeah. Sam goes on to say, like, I've seen you bleed, and you never use a band-aid, you just use a towel and some duct tape, which makes sense. That's definitely the Winchester way. I'm surprised they don't have more scars. That's because of infection, but we're here, we're on TV.
Chuck doesn't want to mess up that pretty face.
And they have
That's true.
They have that hero's look.
Yeah.
That's true. That's very true. Then Sam continues and says, Dean slid behind the wheel of his beloved Impala and drove off. The plastic tarp on the rear view window flapping in the wind like wings of a crow, which I read that as it was a black tarp because crows are black.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Okay. But so in my mind, when he was quoting these things from the chapter, I was like, so Dean's going to be in a car accident, right?
Yeah, like rear-ended by a minivan. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, they're reading this while driving, so I was almost expecting them to get into an accident then, but they're doing the build-up to, like, they can escape this at this moment. Like, they're making us believe that free will does exist in this universe.
I think Dean's not having a big enough crisis yet because he doesn't know, is everything happening because it's what Dean would have chosen, or is Chuck is seeing what Dean chooses, or is Dean bound by whatever Chuck writes?
And I think we kind of get a glimpse into that crisis that he's maybe not having when they go to the, when they're talking about being able to just do the opposite. Let's have an opposite day. Because at this point, Dean still thinks he can escape the narrative.
Right. And he's literally doing this right now.
Yeah.
Also, up until now, everything has been in real time. And so I think he's taken it as you're writing down everything we're doing.
Yeah.
Not, I am bound by this because it's what you've written. And it's from here on out that it really changes.
Yeah.
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 It's like they've sort of missed. Chuck omitted this part of the chapter.
Yeah.
From his vision.
Which, why would he do that knowing that they need this information unless he's got it right now. To escape fate.
Yes.
They tried to leave town and this whole scene is one for fate. But they're supposed to be in Ohio. Ohio is very flat. I don't care if the river is above the bridge. They can drive the other direction away from the river and leave town the other direction, except they're stupid because they're in the narrative.
There's no way. There's only one bridge in a town. What is this? Once upon a time? Like,
sorry, Kripke's from Akron. There's another direction to drive in.
It's also like, this felt very Truman Show.
Yeah.
Right? Where he tried to drive out of the town and there's a roadblock because the same thing.
It's an island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What reference
right.
Annabelle to bring into this one? The Truman Show is perfect.
I mean, the Truman Show has a bit more of a free will to it because it is very much the man being able to do what he wants in his life, but like he is restricted in it. Whereas this is like,
absolutely right.
in this one, it's scripted for them.
Yeah.
So yes, that was the first thing that came to mind when they tried to escape. I was like, oh, it's Truman Show.
No, you're absolutely
At the end
right.
of the Truman Show, he does manage to get out. And at the end of Supernatural.
He was supposed to. He was supposed to.
I hate this. I hate this reality we're in.
So yeah, there's no way it makes sense unless there's a mountain. There's no mountain. It's Ohio. It's flat.
Yeah, but like you said, they're in the story, so they're stupid, and they can't think of another way out.
Because they're being forced to live bad writing.
Exactly. So then they turn back around into town and they decide to go into a diner. They're studying this thing at this point, right?
Yeah.
They've read this probably multiple times to like really figure out what they're going to do. And Dean's like, oh, well, this could be a good thing. It puts us on the path to Lilith, so therefore we just need to get off the path. Mm. But surely he could see that this is not going to work because they literally physically tried to do this already and were turned away.
Hey, look.
He still has hope.
Yeah.
It's early
Dean.
Supernatural.
Oh,
They still have hope.
So yeah, Dean points out, there's a blueprint of what not to do.
If the pages say that we go left,
Then we go right.
exactly.
I'm really sorry to go on another tangent. This line here, I don't know if you remember the Doctor Who episode with, it's a bottle episode. It hasn't got the Doctor in it. It's just Catherine Tate's character, Donna.
Turn left.
Yeah, turn left. It made me think of this immediately because it's all of how her life and the universe would have played out if she had turned right instead of left at a junction.
The giant cockroach on her back.
The giant cockroach.
That moment gets called up in my head often because it's such a common phrase.
Yeah. But it's telling of this, right? Because we do get to see through points in the season of like what would happen if they metaphorically turned right, and it never kind of turns out right.
Dean's like, okay, we're having opposite day. We get into a fight, so we're not going to get into a fight. There's no research for you. And Sam says, and no bacon cheeseburger for you. So the waitress comes over and asks, what they want for food. The waitress says that the cheeseburger is the best. And Sam gets the Cobb salad because of course he does.
I don't even know what that is. It sounds like an American thing. It's a salad.
It's an American thing. It's like iceberg lettuce and then all of the things you can put on top, including bacon.
I'll say like this. Okay, fine.
If Dean would order a salad, he would get that salad.
Okay, fine.
Why would you not also just get the same thing? Like, if you're not supposed to have a burger, then get a salad.
I mean,
that's the opposite day. That's the anti-Dean thing to do.
Maybe he's traumatized by the last episode. He was on that health cleanse.
Yeah.
So he was like, never again. That thing's not going to fill me up.
Juice and cayenne did a number on his
Did you just watch Dean Smith?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the one before this episode, which is wild.
So Dean decides to order the veggie tofu burger.
Why would you put tofu in a burger?
Not a thing.
No. No one would, in their right mind, would put tofu in a burger. Anyway,
I think they just wanted to be like, what's the most opposite thing that Dean would ever do? Vegetables and tofu.
Salad.
Yeah.
You're right.
But it had to be in a burger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how to eat it.
Fork and knife? What is this?
So that they could have the switcheroo moment.
Well,
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Sam calls the idea of him hooking up with Lilith ridiculous, and Dean gets sarcastic, and he's alluding to Ruby here.
Yeah.
And I have this moment because that means we're confirming that Dean knows that Sam and Ruby had sex, which in like season 15, he acts like he never had any idea.
Oh no, he definitely knows. Okay,
Yeah.
so in that must be a retcon because he definitely knows. There was a whole scene where Sam describes him having sex with Ruby.
Right.
And like Dean's like, that was way too much information, man. I didn't need to know that.
Right. So So to me, because of season 15, I was questioning that moment, and this confirms for me that Dean got that far and knows that.
Yeah, he definitely did. It was, I can't remember what episode it was. One we've done recently.
I remember. They should have done a better job convincing us that Ruby was on their side for it to be a shock. They should have been the original, Team Free Will.
Yeah.
Like an angel, a demon, two brothers in the car. We're off. We should have been finally convinced, and then it gets counteracted.
Yeah.
Dean is trying not to get into a fight with Sam, and so he gets proper, and his English gets proper and formal.
It frustrates me when you say such reckless things.
Well, it frustrates me when you'd rather hide than fight.
They're doing the marriage counselling talk.
Yes.
I'm frustrated.
And then the waitress brings over their food and gives Sam the Cobb salad. It is interesting that Chuck decides to name what Dean is eating and not what Sam's eating, because Sam, there's no mention that Sam has to have a Cobb salad.
Because Sam's not fighting the narrative.
That's true. Not at this point. Then the waitress gives the veggie burger. Now, I don't know if anyone has seen what a veggie burger looks like. Back in 2008.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say.
It was not an Impossible Burger.
No.
Just chunks of corn and broccoli in it. Especially if it's a tofu veggie burger.
You would be able to see the bacon, for one. Because we know that Dean looks at his food before he eats it.
Yeah.
He doesn't just shove it in his mouth. He likes to turn the thing around and find the best bite. We've talked about this before.
It's true. I've caught myself doing the same thing now. And I'm like, I think everybody maybe eats a burger like this. It's just Jensen's very good at acting it. You turn it and look at it and you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is the bit where the sauce isn't gonna squirt me in the face if I bite in it.
Maybe he's just stretching it out so he preserves things for continuity. He doesn't take as many bites as he would in person.
True.
That's more likely what it is, yeah.
Aww.
But Dean takes a bite of this burger. He's like, oh, this tofu is amazing. I've been converted. The waitress comes back over and says, actually, no, that was a mistake. That was actually the cheeseburger. So he lived through the eating of a cheeseburger, but not really, because he only took a bite. Does that still count? Because he could have spat it out. He wouldn't have ate it then.
But also that means that most of the scene is left out of the book.
Yeah.
Specifically to manipulate them.
Mm-hmm. So they pull up to a very sleazy hotel that pays by the hour. So it is most definitely a 2000s sex worker hotel. I'm pretty sure they still exist.
I love hotel, as they call them in Japan.
Yeah, they're usually quite nice. Those in Japan. These are gross. These are gross.
Sam reacts to it like he's never stayed anywhere worse in his life.
They definitely have, so.
They definitely have.
Yeah. Or just as bad. Which then also implies that there is a motel in town called the Red Motel.
I don't know. I think Dean just pulled into the first motel that wasn't the Red Motel, right? They've been pretty dumb in this episode.
But, I figure also there's a rhyme and reason to where they would normally stay, and this is not there's a better motel somewhere that had better escapes. That's where they would usually go, and they're choosing this one instead.
Also, talk about dumbness. This hotel's literally lit in the reddest light you've ever seen in your whole life.
So even if it's not called the Red Motel, it's a red motel.
It's a red motel.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
it's not the Red Roof Inn, which is actually a red motel chain.
So Dean starts to lift-proof the room by putting hex bags around. Who gave them the hex bags? We don't know. Probably Ruby, but...
Yeah.
So they've been just carrying them around with them the whole time?
I think she gave them to them a little while ago and said that they would keep Lilith away. So maybe they have probably just been carrying them around with them. But what?
Which makes sense as to why Lilith wouldn't know where they are.
Yeah, I was like, aren't they just carrying them on their person at all times? Why do they have to specifically put them in a place for them to work?
So that they get mentioned for us.
yeah, basically. Dean says, you're not going to do any research, so just, watch some pay-per-view. Dean goes to his bag, pulls out his laptop, and like says, "Just call it a little insurance."
It's a sign of the times it dates the show that he says, "Watch some porn," and then takes Sam's laptop. Porn was on the motel TV. You could add it to your room charge.
Yeah, he's only taking...
And of course this place has that.
It's a hooker hotel. Of course it does. Dean leaves the room, and because in the script it says that he goes driving around, so he's going to go park the car.
Behave yourself, would you? No homework. Watch some porn.
He's so pleased
Where
with
was the
himself.
car before he went to park it?
I don't know why you wouldn't just keep it parked and just stay in the room, but...
Or like just walk from the motel. I mean, I don't know, America, like it's hard to walk from the motel.
But as Dean drives away, the Toreador changes to red. So they are now at the Red Motel. Yep. Quite literally beyond the colour of the actual place. Dean parks the car and walks. He's looking around suspiciously, like, this doesn't feel right, but I'm still gonna walk away from my car. 2 minutes later...
You're right. Why wouldn't he have just left his car at the motel?
Right.
It was already there. It makes no sense.
He's compelled to drive the car.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's very, very bizarre. Dean sees the two teenagers trying to, like, break into the car. These were the teenagers he was worried about in Yellow Fever.
Yeah, right.
His fear came true. He did leave his Sam's laptop on the front seat of the car, obviously, so that's probably why it was broken into shortly.
Oh, that's valid.
I mean, that's my headcanon from it. He just put it on the front seat and was like, yeah, it's fine. Don't do that. And as he turns back round, he gets hit by a van and gets knocked to the ground and is unconscious. We come back to the motel, and Sam has invited Chuck over, which, does this count as research? Because he's researching himself.
Yes.
All right, there's your answer.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I feel bad for Sam. He's rejected by all of the, I quote, holy beings. Anyway.
Apart from Gabriel. Gabriel likes him.
That's true. But we don't know Gabriel's an angel yet.
Oh, sure. Okay, fine.
God, even Chuck likes Dean better.
Yeah, right. Right. So Sam asks, I was wondering how much you know about me. Have you seen visions of me when I'm not with Dean? And Chuck's like, oh, you mean the demon blood?
Straight up.
You didn't tell Dean?
I didn't even write it into the books. I was afraid it would make you look unsympathetic.
Unsympathetic?
True.
But the thing is, that falls on Chuck, because that means he doesn't know how to write it well to make it sympathetic.
Agreed.
Yeah. Also, he's making Sam drink the demon blood.
That's true.
Right, it's... So you've accepted that Chuck is God.
Yeah, big through my own theory that he doesn't know he's God because of the writing. Look.
Okay, but then... So it's his fault unknowingly is what you're currently saying.
Yeah, his fault unknowingly.
Because if it is knowing, this is the most manipulative, like, evil thing, because he's just messing with Sam here.
He's already
knows.
admitted that he's a cruel god.
Yeah.
He said it 3 times. I'm a cruel, 2 times.
Capricious God.
Yeah. No, there you
He
go.
says...
Yeah, come on, Sam. I mean, sucking blood? You gotta know that's wrong.
And to his credit, Jared looks like there's something stuck in his throat in this moment. This is...
So, do you think this is Chuck trying to make this demon blood addiction become an addiction, and therefore becoming sympathetic? Because the way that Sam just says, it scares the hell out of me, this thing inside me, I fucking hate this line.
I wish to God I could stop.
And you're talking...
I love you. You're right. You're right.
He literally says to God that he wished he could stop. Then in 2 episodes, he's in like rehab, essentially.
You're right, because it doesn't make the blood drinking sympathetic, it makes Sam sympathetic, and it's right after saying you have to know it makes you look unsympathetic. You're absolutely right. I don't like that the show always puts its thumb on its scale here, that it's telling you constantly that Sam is wrong for drinking the demon blood, because I think it should have been ambiguous to the audience. I think I can perfectly understand that Sam thinks that's the right thing to do. If you kill some demons in order to fight bigger demons and save the world, absolutely.
Well, so it does kind of make you sympathetic to Sam, because he is being constantly told by other people that he's wrong. So I do feel like there are going to be some people out there who are like, well, I'm going to sympathize with this person who keeps being told that they're doing the wrong thing, even though they themselves in their core believe that they're doing the right thing. And Sam has said this over and over, that, you know, I'm doing this for good. Yes, I know it's wrong, but I'm doing it for good.
Yeah. I do think, the thing is, I actually think Chuck's wrong here. I think he is just being maybe manipulative, because Sam is a sympathetic character, like he very much is. He just wants to save people and save the world. I think it comes across on a rewatch as manipulative, because you're right, he's equating it to an addiction. And I don't think Sam has framed it that way for himself until now.
Right.
It's just designed to drive a further wedge between Sam and Dean. That's everything that Chuck does. Knowingly or unknowingly. It's his sole purpose in like existence is to create this wedge between them for the fight. So for him to make what Sam is doing shameful, it means that he's more likely to keep it a secret, which is just going to drive a bigger wedge between them.
Right, he knows that Dean doesn't know, and he can easily tell him here.
Yeah, exactly.
I also wonder, like, how would Dean know? Because it's not, at this point, it's not implied that they've had conversations with Chuck outside of being in each other's presence. Until now. So it's just like, when would he have said, oh, hey, come over here, like, your brother's drinking demon blood.
Call him. I don't care. Like, obviously, they've reached each other now, so they have each other's numbers.
I mean, I'm guessing he's also trying to feel out whether he would tell Dean, you know. If you know someone, you know you've got a secret, you'd be like asking them, but not asking them, like, are you going to tell my secret to the other person?
That's true. That's very true.
I mean, I'm trying to see it how I first saw it, because obviously the first time through, you just thought Chuck was a writer and a prophet. And maybe this is a moment where Chuck is sort of feeling ownership over these characters, like he is the writer, he's their writer, and he's going through it like a parent or a psychiatrist would. But I just can't see the interaction here as innocent. And I don't know if it's in what Rob's playing, because he didn't know, or if it's in the framing. But this is framed as though Sam is doing everything wrong, and it's framed that way by someone that I'm seeing as manipulative, so I'm seeing them as a villain. But it reminds me of season 6, where everything that Cass is doing is the real storyline, but it's being framed as a side storyline.
Yeah. The problem with this is that until up to this point, Chuck has said that it's his fault that they're doing the things that they're doing, that he is driving them. But when he comes to speak to Sam, he's like, well, this is on you. Why are you drinking the demon blood? Like he hasn't had a hand in that.
You're absolutely right.
So yeah, it is kind of manipulative. Yeah.
So again, same 2 ways to read this is either I'm your parent and I am proud of all of your successes, but anytime you mess up, I'm going to say that that's on your shoulders, and I'm an abusive parent in that way. Or Chuck's in control of everything that's happening, and he's just messing with Sam.
Either read of it. It's
both.
Yes, that's the show. Because he's talking about literary symmetry in this, and he doesn't mean through the end of the show. So yes, that is exactly what he means.
Sorry.
Chuck is John. Sorry.
Yeah, he is.
There's your literary symmetry.
Yeah. So Sam asks, what choice do I have if it helps me kill Lilith and stop the apocalypse? And this is when we know that Dean is his favorite, because Chuck says, I thought that was Dean's job. That's what the angels say, right?
Yeah. Like, why are you trying to like shoulder in on Dean's A plot? Go back to your B plot, Demon Bloods.
But then he counteracts that exact thing right after.
Yeah.
Okay, Chuck was talking to Dean, and he said he hadn't even seen the next chapter yet, but now he's talking to Sam about the blood and says the whole world is resting on his shoulders. That seems to be where the story's headed.
Yeah. But I mean, I think you can, to give Chuck credit.
Really?
Lol. Yeah. I think you can see it in the subtext, because actually the angels have been very vague about Dean's whole thing that he's going to be doing, but we're like, we know where Sam's headed. Right? Surely.
Okay, so if Chuck sees the subtext and knows where the story's going and how much is going to depend on Sam, why did he just say to Sam, no, that's Dean's job? Why are you trying to take Dean's job?
He's a dick.
All right. Sam should have been more mad at Chuck in season 11, like Dean was. Especially for this moment.
But Sam accepts fate and destiny. Yeah. He like, faith and destiny and all of that he doesn't fight it as much as Dean does. Like, he wants to fight against it, but he also kind of accepts it.
But not even for fate. Even if it's not for what Chuck wrote, that if Chuck was always God, that he was messing with Sam in this moment and he was just being cruel.
Yeah. The thing is, Sam's such an I'm on the same track as Annabelle. Sam's such an optimist that I think even if he had confronted Chuck in season 11, it'd be very much like, okay, you put me through these trials and tribulations and all the things I've been through, but it's made me the person I am today. Like, I just feel like that's Sam Winchester. He's like, let's go for the glass half full. Whereas Dean's like, well, I didn't have to go through all that crap in the first place. What the hell?
I am glad that narrative comes from Dean to Sam in 14, not the other way around.
He's not Dean lately. Ever since he got out of hell, he needs help.
Sam's decided that he's the one who should take all the weight of the world, because Dean has looked after him his whole life, and he wants to return the favor. So sweet. I love you, Sam, for this, but you're doing it so wrong. Just, if you want to do that, just talk to the man.
What is that line from Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Motivation's cool, still murder. I think it's from that.
Yeah. They keep playing into the fact that the demon blood is changing Sam's personality.
Yeah.
I don't think it is, though. Not in the way that, because he says maybe the demon blood makes you feel stronger and more in control. So it's like, he's also training a lot.
Yeah.
When you train, he's training his, psychic skills, but I feel like, I think we've mentioned it. We saw a visible difference between the two physiques, let's say, between season 3 and season 4. And there's a scene later on, I think it's in season 5, where we see Sam physically training. So it's not like he's just sitting around just doing the demon stuff. He's training in other ways. So of course you would feel stronger, you would feel more in control, because he also has a plan.
And that can be that too, that he was training to feel more in control, and honestly it's just a good idea if you're going to face Lilith. But you're right, we haven't seen that personality change that comes with addiction that they're implying here.
No,
not yet.
Maybe we should be.
Yeah.
It comes, and I think this is maybe like the start of the beginning of it, because Chuck is very much framed here to be an alcoholic, and he is framing Demon Blood for Sam as an addiction. Like, he's saying, like, you know, it's changing you, it's making you unsympathetic, which I don't think is necessarily true.
Because he's actually writing about himself.
Yeah.
He wants to be both of them, but more Dean than Sam.
No. He wants to sleep with Dean. I thought we...
No, you're right. You're both right. He wrote himself as Sam, but he wants to be Dean, and Dean was written the way he was at the beginning because of jealousy. And I'm going to let you repeat what you just said.
I'm sorry, Sam. I know it's a terrible burden, feeling that it all rests on your shoulders.
Does it?
And Sam's like, does it actually rest on my shoulders? I don't know how Sam has come to this conclusion, but he says it seems like that's where the story's headed. Even though he just said that it was Dean's job to stop the apocalypse.
Yeah.
But now it seems that the weight is on Sam to do something.
Right.
Well, we know what the something is to be Lucifer's vessel.
Yeah.
But
so how does this make sense if Chuck is just receiving the story in his head and hasn't seen the next chapter yet, and just said, like you said, that that was Dean's job to stop the apocalypse, not Sam's.
I mean, he's like, it's the manipulativeness, isn't it?
Right. So this is one of the scenes for me where I'm like, no, he was written like he knew the whole time.
Sam asks if he's strong enough to stop Lilith, and Chuck says, I don't know, I haven't seen that far. But he's seen further. Okay. All right. Do you not know the minutiae? Is that what it is? You just don't know the minute details of the situation? I don't know. So we cut back to Dean, and there's a woman who's like over his face, like trying to wake him up. And like you see the sort of sparklings, reflection of light coming off some star earrings. And Dean just incoherently says,
Stars.
They look like the earrings of these glam rock dolls that existed in the 80s. These giant stars that go down past the shoulders. It's called
they
Gemma,
are
J or something.
Massive. Yeah. Like, I know there are people who love big, giant, like dangly earrings, but those stars have got to be a good 1.5 inches, like, in height.
Yeah.
That's could you have not done smaller ones and more of them? Anyway, whatever.
They look spiky. They look painful to wear.
They look like they would smack her in the shoulders.
Yeah, definitely. The woman then apologizes, obviously, for hitting him with the car, and also her daughter, who's going through a doctor phase. And Dean's like, what are you talking about? And the girl says, oh, you're all better now. I'd be freaked out that was Lilith, but that's fine. We know that we know she's supposed to be coming in as a comely lady, so
please stop using the word comely.
Well, that when she and Sam get together, then it's
no.
You hit a man with your van. You don't even touch him, let alone let your 8-year-old like cover him in band-aids. He should be in a C-spine right now on his way to the hospital.
This is a lawsuit waiting to happen.
It was a gentle
But she's going through a phase. I can't control her with her band-aids. This is a cartoon.
Why is your 8-year-old... is she 8? I don't know how old she's supposed to be. Why is this child out of the car after you've seen your parent run somebody over? Surely you would keep your child in the car so you don't see like the aftermath of a car accident.
That's just a very good point.
Just put it out there.
I just couldn't restrain her from her doctor face.
He looks in the reflection of a window and he sees that he's got like these just flowery pink band-aids all over his face.
Aww.
It then cuts to Dean driving the Impala. By the sounds of it, he's actually, well, not by the looks of it, he's quite far away from the motel.
Yeah.
Because it's not like just around the corner. Because he drives off and like the tarp flaps in the wind, not like the wings of a crow. I don't know what kind of crow flaps its wings like that, but
But they made the caw sound, Annabelle, so you would equate it with the crow.
Sure. That was just for the audience. That was just for the audience.
Yeah.
So we're then back at Chuck's house, and he's got like a whiskey bottle and a 6-pack.
Now Dean is finally starting to lose it.
Yes. Dean is in the living room, as he should have been in Sex and Violence, like just waiting for Sam's arrival.
Right. Disapproving dad face. Where was it?
Dean says, "I take you knew I'd be here," and he says he looks terrible. How? He looks perfectly fine.
Not a scratch on that man. Not
the Band-Aids helped.
Yeah.
He's all better now.
And he says, "Because I got hit by a minivan." Can Chuck see through his clothes and like see the bruising on his torso or something?
Chuck
Yeah.
definitely would have wrote himself that power. Sleazeball.
in the comic, Dean is now actually shirtless in the living room.
Yeah. At any opportunity.
That's where Men's Health got that photo from.
Oh dear. So Dean says, "That's it. Everything you write about me comes true, and that's what you have to say." Oh. Chuck says, "Don't yell at me. Stop yelling at me." He's like, "No, I will never stop yelling at you, Chuck." And Dean says, "Why do I get the feeling there's something you're not telling us?" Which...
What wouldn't I be telling you?
There are so many things.
Telling you.
How you know what you know, for starters?
I don't know how I know. I just do.
It's not good enough.
He throws him against the wall. And then this is the moment that my brain exploded because Cass appears.
What about it, Annabelle? What particularly just blew your mind?
Well, because, right, we're on a rewatch. We know that Chuck is God. Nobody else at this moment knows Chuck is God. And everybody's talking about how they haven't seen their absent father in forever, and yet he's now being confronted with his father, and he's right there. And I was like, oh God, oh God.
Know.
Yeah. And I hated it. And my brain was just like, this is too much. This is too much. This is too much. I paused it, took a walk around my living room, sat back down, and carried on watching because I was just like... The absent father that you wish you had is right in front of you, and you don't even know it, and it's just like...
And the righteous man is slamming him against a wall.
Just like Chuck wanted, huh?
Yeah.
Just
real good
Chuck
thing.
was facing the wrong way. So Cass says, let him go. This man is to be protected because he is a prophet of the Lord.
Cut to black.
Man, I love Cass. Man, I love Cass. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so my brain was like, this just hurts because of everything that comes after this, and like when the reveal happens, and it's just like Cass is looking out for his father, but he doesn't know, and no, it just, I can't even really explain it, but all it did was like, it just made my brain stop, and I was no.
Okay, why is Castiel reading the books?
Maybe he's checking. Maybe he's quality control for the Gospel of Winchester. I mean,
he's the most involved. He's on the ground.
Yeah, he's the expert. So
he's also in charge of the garrison.
Yeah,
we also know that he runs a podcast, so he has to. He's in charge of Angel Radio.
Yeah.
Dean Winchester section.
He didn't just invent free will, he invented podcasting.
Exactly. So he needs to make sure he's up to date with all fiction that is out there in the world.
It's true.
At this point, he doesn't read any other books ever. But I guess this one gets the exception because it's part of the Bible, apparently.
Yeah.
Right.
Winchester Gospel. But
Doesn't have quite the same ring to it, does it?
how intently he looks at that book when he says he's an admirer of the work.
Surely it would be. Sorry. Surely it'd be the Gospel of Chuck. Don't they name Bibles after the prophet, not the people that are in it?
Oh, you have a point.
I was gonna say, wouldn't it be the Gospel of Dean? But I think you're right. I think it would be Chuck.
Yeah. Like, going off of the Bible.
I mean, because there is a Luke reference in this in a moment.
Exactly.
Yeah,
although Luke.
Although the other Kripke's Jewish, not Christian, and the books that are not included in the New Testament are either named after the first word or what they're about, and not who wrote them.
So this is
like
this
Judges.
Is a Jewish natural reference.
I don't know. He says that Chuck's a prophet, and Dean says he might as well be a Penthouse forum writer, which means there's a lot of smut in those books.
Right?
It's not just the one.
But let's get the canonical order of these lines right. Because you're right. So, Chuck says, "You're Castiel," and Cass does say, "It's an honor to meet you, Chuck. I admire your work," and kind of does look at Dean a little bit, in my opinion. And then Dean says, "Come on, he's more of a Penthouse forum writer." So what has Cass been reading, and what does he admire? We have asked this before, but it is a very pertinent question.
Dean and Cassie were in 666, and there were pictures.
It was an illustrated manuscript?
No, it's in this. I don't know about later, but in this episode, it's being printed as a manga or a comic book.
Dick prose. I will fight you on this.
I don't need to be fought. They can contain multitudes.
Yeah. This is fine.
It's a picture book. It's both.
It's a coloring book. Oh. Yep, I guess that's 1 point for Amy. There's no coming back for that one.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't make it in.
It does make that's coming in.
Oh no. So you're right. Cassie's reading this. I agree. He doesn't read any other pop culture stuff, so it must be because it's a biblical text at this point. So he has to keep abridged of it.
The word of Chuck.
It is the word of Chuck. Yeah, Dean's like, no. And Chuck's gone back to his chair and is drinking his whiskey. And Chuck says, well, I might have dreamt about it. So this is implied to be the thing that he's keeping from them, that he always knew that he was a prophet because he dreamt about Cass telling him that he was a prophet.
God, this is getting complicated.
He says that it would be arrogant to call himself a prophet, but he's literally called himself God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a difference to being a god to being chosen by God? Which is the more arrogant?
Really?
Well, I mean, yeah. Because he doesn't say the god, he says a god.
Yeah.
Right? So
as opposed to my writing so good that it was ordained by God.
Yes.
Yeah. he gave himself a little G, not a big G.
You're right.
Yeah. He compares himself to M. Night Shyamalan. I love saying his name wrong. That's my favorite.
Shyamalan.
One of my things I do.
Shyamalan.
M. Night Shyamalan is a very pretentious writer, and he is in all of his movies as well. So Dean, as an aside to Cass, says, "So this is the guy that decides our fate." That he says this to Cass. Okay, fine. No.
No, keep going.
Is something. It's the start. Look, it's the start of something. I feel it. This is the free will is bubbling in this episode. Castiel said he isn't deciding anything. He's a mouthpiece, a conduit for the inspired word, and things like the word of God. What, like the New Testament? or the New Testaments. And Cass then says these books will be known as the Winchester Gospel. I would have liked to have seen them at some point bound into the Winchester Gospel. I think that would have been really funny.
Metatron should have just been carrying it in the background at some point. It's an Easter egg.
Yeah.
You're right.
It would have been real good. And Dean and Chuck both in unison say, "You've got to be kidding me."
I am not kidding you.
I love him so much.
He doesn't understand the reference.
So Chuck leaves to go drink more, and Dean again turns to Cass, is like, "Him, really?" And Cass says, "Well, you should have seen Luke," implying that he was also maybe an alcoholic mess. Who knows?
When Dean says what, like, the New Testament, Chuck uncovers his face and, like, looks up for information. But right before that, Dean says, "What, like the Word of God?" And they cut to Chuck covering his face.
Interesting.
He's just like don't, like, whistling and walking by. No one will know.
Nothing to see here. Nothing suspicious.
So Dean asks how prophets are chosen, and Cass says he doesn't really know. It's high up on the chain of command, and again, never really explained how prophets are chosen. It's never applied to be Metatron, and he's pretty high up there on the chain of command. So,
right, and we meet archangels, and they certainly don't pick who the prophets are. So
it's Chuck.
It's Chuck. Yeah. Right, Chuck chooses the prophets,
and
so he's chosen himself.
Well, yeah, because like when a prophet, well, I mean, we find out later, when a prophet dies, we get another prophet. But I mean, all I'm saying is that Chuck is very responsible for what happened to Kevin, and Kevin didn't deserve that.
When Castiel says that it's the Winchester Gospel, Dean says, "You've got to be kidding me," but Chuck also says, "You've got to be kidding me," and you see Dean start to say it first, and so the first time through, it's like, oh, they're both in shock. But now in hindsight, it reads like when you're watching a movie and you know what the person's going to say and you say it along with them.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah. Oh, there should have been more of that in this. There should have been way more of that in this.
You're right. Because he knew all of the things they were going to say.
Yeah. It should have been like mystery spot levels of guessing, saying what they're saying.
Yeah, because I mean, there was only one other instance of that, of like him handing over the papers. That was it.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's seen all of them as opposed to Sam and Dean.
So Dean asks Cass, "How do we get around this?" And Cass is confused. He's like, "Around what?" And he's like, "Well, the Sam Lilith thing, and how do we stop it from happening?" And Cass says, "What the prophet has written can't be unwritten. As he has seen it, so it shall come to pass." All right, leaning into the angel shtick there. So basically, Cass is saying, like, well, you can't. There's no escaping this. This is going to happen. Yeah. I know, I just had to put it in more painful terms. So Dean drives back to the motel and he sees that the sign has now says red because the lights have died around it. And he realizes, I think, that they are stuck on the path that, they have been walking on this whole time. Dean says to Sam, like, "We're getting out of here, let's go." And then confronts him because the hex bags have gone. Turns out Sam wants to stay to confront Lilith. He thinks this is their only chance to do so. They have a pretty big fight about it because Dean... This is what we were talking about earlier. Sam's like, "This is our fate. We said at this point we can beat Lilith. We can beat Lilith, let's do it." And Dean's like, "No, even if it means beating Lilith at this point, it's not worth it, let's go." He's not on the fate train.
He also reveals to Sam that Chuck's not a psychic, he's a prophet.
Yes, exactly. Which, you think Sam would have more of a reaction to Chuck being a prophet than a psychic because of his whole, like, faith in God thing. But I do feel like at this point in the series, that is very much on the, like, downhill slope. His faith has gone...
Well, so I feel like that's even more backing for Sam, actually, because if a prophet of God is saying that he needs to confront Lilith at this moment in time...
Oh, true.
Then he needs to stay here and confront Lilith at this time.
Yeah. You're right.
And also telling him not to drink blood. But okay. Okay. This goes in two directions. Because here, Dean is assuming Sam is going to be like him and want to get the fuck out of there. And Sam's like, no, you're telling me that that's the will of God. That's my fate. So I'm going to stay and fight Lilith. But it's actually the opposite. Sam thinks that there's no way he's going to fall into fiery passion with Lilith. And Dean thinks, yeah, Sam is completely capable of doing that. I think that this will come true, and therefore we need to get the hell out of here.
I think at this point in the episode as well, like Dean's had more experiences of things becoming true in the writings that he's had. Like he got hit by that minivan, the Impala's busted, he had those plasters on his face. Like it's all come true.
The burger,
whereas Sam's just been sat in the motel room.
Well, yeah, because we haven't Chuck doesn't write about Sam.
Right.
He writes about Dean.
You're right. All the things happened to Dean. Yeah. Okay.
If Dean doesn't know about the blood, why does he assume it's a bad thing that Sam can kill demons? Because he got the power from the Yellow Eyes?
It's from because it's from Hazel. It's rooted in evil, so it must be evil, and it's very John Winchester of him to think so.
I hate that.
Imagine an alternative narrative where Sam turned out to be evil, and so he kills Chuck, so they can't reveal everything that he's gonna do.
Right. Just kill Chuck. We could have killed Chuck off years ago. It's fine.
No.
So Dean doesn't want to stay. He's worried that Sam will die if he does. He says Lilith is going to slaughter you. And he's like, maybe she will, maybe she won't. And Dean reveals that, he knows what Sam did to Alistair.
How you ripped Alistair apart like it was nothing, like you were swatting a fly. Cass told me, okay?
Cass and Dean gossiping about Sam. That never changes.
Heard you wore a cardigan.
But yeah, so when did Cass tell Dean that? This is the in between scenes that we don't see, because again, Dean is regularly calling Cass at this point, and so is Sam, suggesting that in conversation outside of them interacting, they're referring to him as Cass. I think one of the angels, right, even referred to him as Cass at one point, which means they've been saying it enough. Yeah, Uriel did, which means they've been saying it enough that the other angels are picking up on it now. So there are definitely more interactions that they are having with Cass at this point than we are seeing.
Which brings into question how they're doing it, especially since there's something that happens in this episode.
Yes.
That, yeah.
He just appears like, hi guys.
Just comes to him in his dreams.
Stop, baby.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. Yeah, he does. I think it's interesting that, Cass is telling on Sam. You wouldn't believe what he did to Alistair. I know. When you were unconscious, can't believe he did that.
But in that moment, if you were Sam, wouldn't you think that Dean knew about the blood?
That's what I was going to say too. Why would he tell him about Alistair in this way, but not the fact that...
Because he doesn't know.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, because Ruby knows how to ward against angels, so they can't see what they're doing when they're together. He just, Sam goes off, disappears off their radar, and then comes back.
Also, do you really believe that Cass is following Sam around when he goes off by himself?
Absolutely not.
He's got a whole detail.
At this point.
Well, so
he has minions. It's fine.
I would have said that it was Uriel's task to follow Sam, but because he was already sort of sidetracked by his own mission, he let it drop because he wants Sam to do what he's doing.
That's true.
So he's not reporting back.
That makes so much more sense. If Uriel was the one who had to follow Sam, and then just wasn't telling the whole truth because Annabelle, that's genius. That's genius. I love that. Yeah. Uriel in the room while Sam and Ruby are getting on.
Honestly, that fits perfectly.
I mean,
Well, no, because Uriel doesn't like either of them. He thinks demons are disgusting, and Sam is just as
Right.
bad.
exactly. It just adds to his contempt for them, like, disgusting.
I have to be here, and it's wrong. Yeah, I guess so.
Gross.
So Sam does say, what else did he tell you? Thinking that he's going to tell him about the demon blood, but Dean's like, nothing I don't already know. So, yeah. You've been using your psychic crap and you've been getting stronger. We don't know why. And he says, we don't know why. So him and Cass, they're a little unit. And we don't know how.
Yeah.
God, wouldn't you feel so isolated as Sam at this point?
Yeah.
Ugh. Dean.
And he's like, me and Cass are over here judging you. You don't get to join our angel club because you're a demon freak. Sorry, Sam. I mean, not in so many words, but I mean, honestly, like...
But even in the beginning, or what the episode after in the beginning that I think is the same episode. So the fourth episode, he says, God doesn't want you to be doing this. Mm-hmm. And now it's just come back. The only one who knows that Sam is drinking blood is not Castiel. It's not any of the other angels. It's just this prophet who's getting word directly from God, according to Sam, and saying you have to know this is wrong.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Like, poor Sam. He believes in angels so much. He believes he's doing the right thing so much. And they're just like, no, mate, you're wrong. So,
It should be presented like he is.
Right, yeah, it should be nuanced. Sam says it's not what you think. And Dean's like, well, what is it then, Sam? Because I'm at a total loss. He goes, takes his bag, and he's like, are you coming or not? And Sam's like, no. And then Dean waits and then puts his bag back down and decides to stay. You know, if Sam's not going, he's not going. It was bluffing. It's like when you leave your kid having a tantrum in the supermarket. It's like, fine, I'm leaving you here. And start walking a little bit away. And
I don't know if he's even in the rest of the written narrative. So if he left, it would just feed into it. He's like, there's no way I'm leaving Sam alone in this motel.
Exactly.
So he drops the bag.
Is his dad?
Are you ready to talk about it?
Is his dad? Yeah, I'm ready to talk about it. So
the scene.
This is it. This is the scene in the episode. So Dean goes out, presumably because he's so mad with Sam, to try and get himself a drink at a vending machine, but it just takes his money. Look, this was the thing that sparked free will. He didn't get his soda, so he was like, I'm so frustrated in life, I'm going to pray. So Dean's very reluctantly starts praying.
Who is Dean praying to?
I don't think, this is my opinion, I don't think he's specifically praying to Cass. He's praying for help, and Cass turns up.
I'm praying, okay? Come on. Please.
Prayer's a sign of faith. This is a good thing, Dean.
What do you guys think? Do you think he was praying to Cass, or was it to the cosmos?
I think it was to the cosmos, because he's just found out that their prophets actually exist along with angels. Because, we know Dean has to see things in order to believe them. So,
yes.
Someone could have said there were prophets and he would have been like, yeah, no, whatever. But now he's met one. So he's putting his faith in that because Chuck is a mouthpiece for God, there might just be one.
Who can maybe change things if he's already laying out the path?
Yeah.
In hindsight, I always see this as pulling a switch. You're supposed to think that Dean is praying to God and he's praying to Castiel, and Castiel comes, and I have a lot to say about that. But really watching, I think that Dean has been confronted with the fact that Chuck exists, that he's been told Chuck is a prophet, everything that Chuck writes comes to pass, and therefore he has to confront that God is real. Mm-hmm. And now he's prayed to him.
Yeah. Obviously the irony of it is that God doesn't come to help him, Cass does.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Which then it hurts even more to when Dean does this in later seasons and Cass doesn't come.
Oh, I hate you.
Yeah, that was where my brain went when I watched this. I was just like, oh God.
But I think this is the only time that Dean prays to God. I think every other time after this, it's always to Cass.
I think he prays to God once in the series, and it was to bring Cass back.
Yes. Oh, yes. So, tomato.
Okay, this to me is the same moment as Dean calling John in home.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a moment of like pure desperation. Like, what else do? I have no idea. I need my dad here, but John's not here anymore. Just found out God exists, so
he only has faith in desperation, and he reached out to John, and John didn't show up. And now, in desperation, he reaches out to God, and God doesn't show up. Cass shows up.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Absentee fathers. And like, yeah, finding your faith in something else, maybe. So Dean does then turn and say, does that mean you'll help me? To Cass, and Cass says, I'm not sure what I can do. So Dean wants Cass to help him get Sam out, but Cass says, like, it's a prophecy that he can't interfere with that. And Dean really confronts him here, and he's like, you've tested me, you've thrown me every which way, and I've never asked you for anything, not a damn thing. But now I'm asking, I need your help, please. He really, yeah. Mm-hmm. And Cass is like, well, you're asking, it's not within my power to do. And Dean's like, because it's divine prophecy, and Cass agrees. And Dean says, like, we're supposed to just sit around and make this happen, and Cass apologizes. Again, Dean gets angry with him. He says, screw you and your mission, your God. If you don't help me now, then when the time comes and you need me, don't bother knocking. But then, this is it. This is the moment. Mm-hmm. So Dean walks past Cass, and from behind him, Cass is like, Dean, like, no, wait.
Prophets are very special. They're protected.
And I was like, wink. He says, if anything threatens a prophet, anything at all, an archangel will appear and destroy that threat.
Archangels are fierce. They're absolute. They're heaven's most terrifying weapon.
And Dean says, well, are they tied to prophets? And Cass says, yes. And then Dean's like, well, so if a prophet was in the same room as a demon, they really lay it out. Like, I feel like Cass has already done like so much groundwork on the like
right?
wink. But they're laying it out for us. You know, Cass says then the most fearsome wrath of heaven would rain down on that demon. And this, just so you understand why I can't help. And the side eye is perfect.
It's so good, and it's all in the acting. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't know if it would have been written this way. That we're talking about the actual author of the episode now. But Dean's just threatened to let the world burn.
Yeah.
If he has to lose Sam. And it doesn't feel like Castiel's reacting to that threat. It feels like, hey, I just had this idea and I want to help you. And I don't know if that's just in the way that Misha acted it versus how it was written. But it's such an iconic scene. We forget how completely out of character it is for Castiel to use nuance and code to get meaning across.
Yeah.
To have plausible deniability.
I mean,
is this a decision? Is this the decision?
I mean, I will talk about if this is the decision because, okay, right. Let's just go on to it because we need to talk about it. So the next scene is Chuck in his house and he's on the couch. Dean comes in.
What are you doing here? I didn't write this. Come on.
Yeah, and we already know that he prefers to write about Dean, so he would have wrote this.
Right. So what this is, very clearly, and I don't know how they've done this because it is actually fine. It's smart. But this is Cass breaking the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Cass is the one who came up with the idea, so Dean is there, so Chuck didn't write it. And this is confirmed in Unity when he says to Cass, like, basically, you were made wrong. You have gone against my plans in all regards. Like, you do break the narrative. He really confirms that. And this is one of those moments. He wasn't able to write it because it wasn't written.
Okay. Chuck the writer, Chuck the person would have experienced things he's not written. Chuck God has never, ever experienced things that he has not written.
I mean, when it comes to Dean, like, it would be surprising because he's his character, so he would have known anything that he, like... I'm sticking to my guns here.
Is he getting a premonition on every time, like, Dean goes to the bathroom? Like, it's not going to be literally every detail.
And that's how he likes it, actually. I do understand where you're coming from. Like, if God was Chuck if Chuck was God all along, then this is
a bigger shock.
This is a much bigger shock, and it makes sense with the whole Cass breaking. This is Cass's free will moment, and we have been building to it, because we had on the head of a pin, expressing his doubts to Anna. And so we know he was already questioning, like, whether he should be following his orders all of the time. And I think he's seen an opportunity where he's still following orders, but it's like there's a loophole.
I guess in his mind at that point, with Dean saying, you know, like, if you don't help me now, then I'm not going to help you. It's a panic moment a little bit. So he, like, you know, was said, he came up with this plan on the fly.
But he doesn't look panicked at all. No, you're right. I think it's a split between how it's written and how it ended up coming through in the episode. He's not panicked at all. He's cool, calm, and collected.
Do you think it's because he was somewhat formulating this plan already? Knowing... Because he knows that Dean doesn't follow orders in any kind of way. And this whole episode is about following orders in terms of, like, this manuscript, this writings. So I don't know.
I honestly think, again, if you watch this sequentially, like, Cass really wanted to help Dean in on the head of a pin. Like, there were true doubts there. Like, he didn't want him to make him do the things he had to do, and he wanted to help him. And I think this was an opportunity that he saw that he could actually help him, and so took it. I think it's about Dean.
Of course it is.
Yeah, I mean, it is. In season 6, Cass is fighting Dean's war, essentially. But later on, it obviously changes, especially at the end. But earlier on, we always thought that Cass got the concept of free will from Dean. And it's this moment that Dean feels trapped in it, and Cass is the one who's able to, for the first time, get him out of it. Like, even at the end of the episode, Zachariah says to Chuck, has anything you've written not come true? And the answer was yes, because this was the change.
Yeah. And it's Cass who fueled the change. There was no reason why this couldn't be written in, if that makes sense. Like it disrupts Chuck's, like, original Lilith writing.
Also, just to get with semantics for a second, it doesn't matter what Chuck writes, it matters what Chuck sees. Because the blood drinking is happening even though Chuck doesn't write that down. But here Chuck says, I didn't write this. Not, I didn't see this.
Yeah, I don't think he even saw it coming.
Right, he didn't see it coming at all. That's the point.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really... Cass is the only one who lives outside of the story, essentially.
Yes.
There was something that... They never tell us why it's this Cass, right? Out of all the Casses that is able to have free will, they kind of allude to it, but it's not never told to us directly. So you have to fill in the gaps, and the only gap can be like, I kind of like Dean.
Right, but on the one hand, he had to have been he had to be erased earlier, before he'd even ever met Dean. But on the other hand, he's not the only angel that gets erased.
Yeah.
Or reprogrammed. Like, Anna gets reprogrammed. Of course, Cass took over Anna's narrative.
It might become clearer through a rewatch. I hope so. God, I hope so.
Dean, whose ultimate greatest fear becomes fate and having a destiny that he can't escape. And Cass, who is the only one who can help him escape that destiny.
It's almost like it's an epic love story.
I know!
What? No. We're reading too much into it. I'm so sorry.
Does any other prophet operate this way? Like, I think maybe once we see a vision with Donatello, but like Kevin just reads things. Are other prophecies inescapable later in the series?
It's a different kind.
I feel like this is the only time we see a quote unquote prophet look like this setup.
Yeah, they kind of changed the prophet system, definitely, because it's all about demon and angel tablets, yada yada yada.
Yeah,
But,
it's presented more like Missouri and Patience, where they're just psychic.
yeah, which fine, they're allowed to retcon how prophets work, but then you can't make your prophet God and then retcon it at the same time. Like,
He's different because he's God.
yeah. So,
I need you to come with me.
What? Where?
To the motel where Sam is.
and he says, right, you have an archangel tethered to you, okay? All you got to do is show up and Lilith gets smoked. And again, Chuck's like, but I haven't seen that yet, the story. So he's saying, like, he's not seeing this bit, and he hasn't seen the bit where he gets to the motel and the archangels appear, etc. So he's very confused. Dean says, Chuck, you're the only shot I've got left.
I'm just a writer.
This isn't a story anymore, man. This is real, and you're in it.
See, if he wrote himself into the story, he's having to deal with the consequences of his own actions on that one by now being part of the story. So Chuck says no, but Dean's like, well, how about this? I've got a gun in my pocket, and if you don't come with me, I will blow your brains out. And Chuck says, but I'm protected by an archangel. And Dean's like, well, let's see who the quicker drawer is, which, I mean, definitely would have been Dean, 'cause it takes ages for an archangel to appear.
Only in this episode, not in others.
The archangels haven't found their vessels yet, have they?
Yeah, we're
So they have
waiting
to go.
Oh, and they need a really strong one.
Yeah. Perfect. That is why.
Although all they would have to do would be like speak, and everyone's brain shatters.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they was doing in this
We have
episode.
to ignore that for the whole series. It just doesn't.
Maybe-
Anytime that they're trying to kill the Winchesters, you just try to ignore that.
Maybe it's only Cass has that power because of the deep baritone.
The vocal fry.
Yeah.
That'll shatter glass.
Yeah.
If Chuck is God here, then he could easily have not been threatened or press ganged into this by Dean.
But he wrote himself into the story, so he's powerless. Sucks to
He
be
wrote himself
him.
into the story.
Sucks to be him.
Okay, wait. But then there's like season 11 where, fakes weakness, and just to recapture the feeling he experiences in this episode where he gets to be part of the story next to Dean Winchester.
It's true. He likes to be manhandled.
He does.
Up against that wall.
So we go back to the motel room, and Sam hears a knock. He goes and opens it. It is not Dean and Chuck. It is Lilith. We know because from the vision, it's the same lady, and her eyes go white. They didn't really need to make her eyes go white. It's the same lady.
Well, Sam doesn't know that yet, though, because he hasn't seen
Oh
it
yeah, he
yet.
hasn't seen the vision. He doesn't know what the dental hygienist looks like. Good point. I really like the rolly eyes. I wish
Yeah.
they hadn't lost that, actually. It is good.
So Lilith enters the room and asks Sam where the knife is, and he says it's on the nightstand next to the bed.
It goes next to the bed. There's so much emphasis.
No, it's Sam, you don't want to be bedding this demon. You know you don't want to be bedding this demon. Stop implying that you do.
She wants to, except that he has a devil's trap in the bed.
Yeah, what? Okay, no, we'll talk about devil's traps in a second.
So yeah, she pulls back the cover of the bed and she sees a devil's trap and she just touches it and it like burns only this small section of it.
No, the devil's trap is under the rug leading to the bed.
Okay.
Why didn't he do the old switcheroo and draw one on the ceiling? She never looked up. I checked while I was watching the episode.
Well, actually, did she look up because her eyes rolled back, so maybe she would have it.
Good point.
Yeah, the only demon that ever looks up is when Sam is possessed by Meg, and it's because she fell for that once.
Yeah.
And fool me twice.
Meg learned her lesson. No one else did.
Crowley probably looks up.
There's an angel radio, right? So they communicate with each other because everybody knows who Dean Winchester is.
Yeah.
Why is there not the same thing with the demon saying, hey, when you interact with the Winchesters, look up?
Because they're not in for the whole cooperation thing. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there in the demon world.
But they still communicate with... Yeah.
The newsletter, Annabelle. Only some people read it.
That's true. It would be a newsletter.
Yeah.
Once Crowley takes over, there's a newsletter.
I'm sure they mention a newsletter.
It does feel right.
Yeah.
It does feel right. Lilith says, you got to try harder than that. And Sam says, how about this? And does his whole psychic thing. Sure. But it has no effect. And Lilith says, well, you're strong, but not strong enough. So basically they're at a power balance. So Lilith can't do anything to Sam. We've already seen that at the end of No Rest for the Wicked. So they're at a stalemate.
Even if I'm offering to stand down from the seals, the apocalypse, all of it.
Do you think this is true?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is actually a very important conversation. I think for what's good. If you think about the end of this season, I think it's this season, what happens to Lilith? Yeah, I think she knows what's going to happen. It's hard.
I think she knows, but she's in on that plan. I don't remember if Ruby and Lilith are talking.
Yeah.
I think they are.
I never remember Ruby's motivations when I'm watching this.
They were thrown in after the fact.
I don't know. I think Lilith does know her fate. She definitely does. I wonder why. I wonder at her motivations of telling Sam, because it is true.
Yeah.
But maybe I've talked myself out of it. I think this is definitely like she was never going to go through with this, because the end of this, it only makes Sam more like vitriolic towards her, even more than he already was.
Yeah.
So it's like it is just leading to what ultimately what she wants to get out of this, which is her being stabbed.
Why was it ever about them sleeping together? It doesn't make any sense on any level.
It was Chuck.
It's just what you like to see on TV. Yeah, it was Chuck. It just anytime it's bad, we'll just be like, oh, it's Chuck's fault. But if they had, that would have been Jesse's origin story.
Yeah.
Create the little demon baby.
That's true. Jesse's such a stupid storyline. I guess because sorry.
Only because it became an episodic thing.
Right.
Because it's too powerful to never mention again. It's an interesting one-off.
So Sam questions her and says, you expect me to believe that? And Lilith says, no, but you are always the smart one, and it's the truth. Sam could end it right here, right now, keep Lucifer rotting in his cage, which I thought was interesting because to demons, Lucifer is God, so why would you allow him to rot in a cage? All you have to do is agree to my terms. Sam says, why would you back down? Why now? And Lilith says, turns out I don't survive this war, killed off right before the good part starts. So she wants the apocalypse, wants Lucifer free, but only reason why she doesn't want to do it is because she's going to die.
I wonder if this is... So I wonder with Lilith, because we don't really delve into her character a lot. She's like a disciple of Lucifer, right? So she's basically knowing that she's going to have to give up her own life to bring him out of the cage. I wonder if her coming to Sam at this point is like a moment of doubt for her about whether she should really be doing that. for the cost of her own life. I wonder...
But she's a fanatic.
But this might be a legitimate offer, but it's like a moment of maybe I shouldn't do the apocalypse.
I think it would have been more interesting if it was written that way or performed that way, but the way that it's presented, it just feels like someone who's manipulating Sam and not a doubt moment. Like, she comes on so strong with these creepy lines. It comes just... It reminds me of Ruby trying to get Sam to sleep with her. Where, it's warm in this body. Like the dental hygienist wants it, Sam.
Oh, I hate that line. I hate that line
it's
so much.
So gross.
And
I don't enjoy Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, demons and their human counterparts are not.
Nope.
She's explaining that her motivations is like to go back to how it was, not having angels on her back 24/7, where she can just drink the blood of babies. Sure, go for it. You do you, love. And Sam asks, so what do you get in return? And Lilith says, your head on a stick. Dean's to call it a consolation prize.
Self-sacrifice is the Winchester way, isn't it?
But the funny thing is if they had taken this deal, they would have stopped the apocalypse because there would be no vessels for either of the angels. So it would have worked.
Angels can just bring them back anyway,
but would they try?
Bring him back a lot of times.
I don't know.
This is why I wonder if it was just like Lilith. Why is she there? No, seriously, why is she there? Because
it's a red herring for the monster at the end of the book.
It really doesn't add to anything that they're doing. It doesn't make sense at all why she's there offering them this. Yeah.
Up until this point, knowing the name of the episode is the monster at the end of this book, they needed a decoy monster that at the beginning of the story is going to be at the end of the book, and you were dreading the entire time until you get there. And there's a switcheroo pulled at the end, but until that point, you assume that the title is talking about Lilith.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It just feels like dumb.
Because it is.
Valid.
Yeah.
Because it is.
I mean, it's because, Chuck God needed like Amy was saying, needed something to put a wedge between the two of them to separate the two.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So the only thing that really ever gets them heated and like in the position where they would separate is anything demon related. And on top of that, the description of being in the throes of passion, demonic passion, would definitely get under Dean's skin.
Because you're right. Oh my god, no, this is it. This episode doesn't end like it's supposed to end, right? Because of Cass's intervention. So the whole point the whole point in the whole Lilith thing is literally just to drive Sam and Dean apart. Yeah, because where would this have gone if Cass hadn't helped them? What would have happened? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Sam says he was never going to take the deal. But that Dean believed he might start a fight.
This is how I think this episode would have gone. I think, this is off the top of my head, he tries to stab Lilith in this. I think he maybe would have been a little bit successful. Dean comes back to the motel room, catches him drinking Lilith's blood. Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think
that's valid.
I think you're right. Yeah.
How many times did they say fiery passion? So I thought that at some point the room was going to get lit on fire. But the only way that comes true even a little bit is the Archangel lighting the place up, which wouldn't have happened unless Cass interfered.
Mm.
But it's not demonic fire, though, is it? It's angelic fire, so it's a different kind.
Oh!
Lilith tries to convince Sam by saying, sacrifice yourself for the millions.
Maybe it's all that demon blood pumping through your pipes. Man after my own heart.
Sam says, I'm nothing like you. Again, taunting. Lilith says, prove it. Says, going once, going twice, as if like it's an auction. And Sam says, fine. She says that, if we're going to make this deal, I need something more than a kiss. And apparently that means sex.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good job for Bobby that Crowley didn't require that.
Why did you use tongue?
Yeah. We see the vision come to fruition. So she pats the bed and he comes over. He goes on top of her but ends differently by grabbing the demon knife and tries to stab her.
With fiery passion.
And I think Amy is right. He probably could have somehow managed to wrangle it so that he could cut her a little bit, drink the blood, get super powerful, and exorcise her.
Yeah.
Or like weaken her enough to then be able to drink more to then.
This is my headcanon. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So that was the original plan for this episode. Until Cass put a wrench in the spanner. Wrench in the spanner?
The wrench in the spanner.
Spanner in the works. In true supernatural fashion, the door swings open and Dean is there with Chuck.
I am the prophet Chuck.
Like that's supposed to mean anything.
I like it.
Lilith actually has the knife because they obviously fight and she gets the upper hand. And she says, "You've got to be joking." And Dean says, "No, this is no joke." And then the room starts to tremble and I can't imagine the other people in the motel, like how this is tripping them out, to be honest.
Someone turned on the magic fingers. It's fine.
I thought this was a big like lightning storm just because we see like Raphael in later episodes with the lightning wing thing happening.
Yeah, it could very well be, yeah.
Early in Supernatural, all these forces are like this more existential threat. Like hell is the place we see at the end of season 3. The Archangel being this glowing exterior force of the light has such a greater impact when everybody's just some guy.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I do miss the mysticalness of Supernatural in later seasons. And then the not knowing, like, what's an archangel going to look like? Because they're super powerful. They're like heaven's warriors. They're not just going to be like a guy in a suit, but yeah.
And yet.
Where's the like golden armor and stuff? Anyway, fine.
Yeah, who wrote the heaven dress code?
Naomi.
Yeah.
So Dean goes on to explain that you see Chuck here has got an archangel on his shoulder you've got about 10 seconds before this room is full of wrath. And you're a piece of charcoal. Lilith gives Sam a look and then leaves the vessel.
Yeah. And then they look at this woman on the floor and I kept expecting her to wake up and I'm like, oh, she's just dead now.
I think she's just dead now.
I think she's just dead now.
It's almost like Lilith was lying about what the dental hygienist wanted.
Well, yeah.
She wanted
it. Ugh. She's a demon. No. A bad demon. Not even a good demon. So, you're right. Lilith gives Sam a look like, we'll finish this later. I think it's almost before leaving as well. So, end of this episode, the last kind of scenes. We see Dean driving, Sam's in the passenger seat in his normal place. The rear window is still broken. I guess they're going to be driving back to Bobby's. I mean, where else are you going to find the rear window of a 67 Impala, like, honestly? And clearly Sam has told Dean what's happened, because Dean says, "A deal, huh?"
Call the whole thing up. Angels, seals, Lucifer rising, the whole nine.
That was the gist of it.
Huh.
What?
You didn't think once about taking it?
You kidding me?
So, would Dean have taken this deal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Good discussion, everybody.
I mean, Lilith clocked them, self-sacrificing.
Yeah.
He is all about sacrificing one for the many.
Yeah.
Only if it's him.
Yeah.
Only for him, that's right.
He wouldn't sacrifice Sam.
No.
I mean,
Sam would.
Sam would, but would he sacrifice Dean? I think Dean would. I think he would, yeah. I think Sam would sacrifice Dean, yes. But
if Sam made that deal, is Dean held to that deal?
I guess so, yeah.
So he made a decision for Dean to end his life.
But he wasn't going to take it.
Yeah, right, he didn't make that decision.
Yeah.
For him.
So Sam does say, "You're kidding me, right? Because like you tried to spend all day talking me off the Lilith track." And Dean's like, "Well, I'm just saying." Sam does have a good point. Like, even if he'd made the deal, she would have made a way to weasel out of it. Like, there would have been some kind of loophole, something for her to get out of it. And Dean's like, "Well, yeah, I guess you're right." And Sam said, "But that's not actually the point. Like, the point is she's scared. Like, he could tell that she was scared. Lilith is running." So, hey, Sam's but like, he believes me. He thinks that she's having like a moment of doubt or whatever. But maybe she's just a really good actor. And Sam says, "I don't know what she's running from, but she was telling the truth about one thing. she's not going to survive the apocalypse. I'll make sure of that.
So I'm gonna kill her.
So yeah, he's playing into her hands.
He does make sure of that.
I mean, he is a man of his word.
If there is one way to describe him, that is it.
What is it? Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we cut back to Chuck, and he's asleep. He's having another vision dream thing, but he suddenly wakes up, and Zachariah is there, who we got introduced to last episode. And Zachariah says, "Did you see it?" And Chuck asks who he is, and Zachariah says, "I'm Zachariah. You may know me from your work."
So does that mean that he just wrote the last episode?
He just wrote "It's a Terrible Life." Yes, he did. He wrote Dean that way. He wrote him that way. Chuck says, like, what do you want? And Zachariah asks again, "Did you see it?" And Chuck says, is that true? Is all of that really going to happen? Zachariah asks, "Have you been wrong so far?" He doesn't answer. He says, "I've got to warn Sam and Dean." Zachariah says, "I wouldn't advise it. People shouldn't know too much about their own destiny. You try and I'll stop you."
Where are you going?
To go kill myself.
Don't be melodramatic, Chuck. We'd only bring you back to life.
There's no way out for Chuck either. Like, he's also stuck in the story. Like, and Chuck asks what he's supposed to do, and Zachariah says, "What you always do, right." And then the episode ends. What a weird interaction to have at the end of this episode. What could it possibly mean?
So they really do sort of change how prophets work, because like you said, we do learn that prophets can, like, being a prophet jumps once the prophet has died.
Yeah.
So
I guess unless an angel brings you back to life.
Yeah, not Buffy rules.
There is a point though, isn't there? There are two prophets because of Buffy rules.
yeah,
Right.
I mean, at the very end,
Sort of.
they break,
Yeah.
or so Faith is also a slayer because Buffy died.
Yeah, exactly. And then Donatello is one at the same time as
Donatello's
Kevin?
in a... No.
No, Kevin.
Donatello's after Kevin, but Donatello ends up in a coma, and so the next prophet
Yes.
starts like getting like the Joan of Arc treatment,
Yeah.
and therefore becomes a murderer because reasons.
And then eventually the demons like gather all the potential prophets and like tries to kill them off one by one.
That's after
Right, yet somehow
Kevin.
Donatello's alive.
Yeah.
I'm so confused. Anyway, prophets.
So yeah, so okay, so there would be two prophets out there. Is that what we're going with? That we're going with Buffy rules, that there would be two. Will be Chuck.
I guess you have to go with, like, is Chuck a true prophet? Does he play by prophet rules? No, probably not. Even though he is a prophet, technically. Okay, fine. Look, none of it makes sense, Annabelle.
I mean, also that means there is being a prophet throughout all of this, but like we have no idea who it is because Kevin is not yet old enough, so someone else is a prophet right now in the world of Supernatural.
That's true. If Chuck isn't a prophet, it does mean there is another prophet out there. Anyway.
And another prophet gets called, and Chuck's still alive. Kevin starts being a prophet. It's not because Chuck died.
Or is what Amy's right in that God, like, oh no, never mind. I was going to say, because we know that there have been previous prophets because of Luke. And what I was going to say is Chuck writing himself as Chuck writing himself a prophet, making a lineage of prophets, but no, that wouldn't make sense.
I don't know, man. Look, we overcomplicated the prophet thing.
I think we all agree that Chuck is choosing the prophets.
Yes, I do agree with that.
I don't think it is ever an impact of that, but I think that's the one point we all
So we all agree on. Fine, yeah, we do. You were saying before we came on the podcast, Charlie, like about the monster at the end of the book. So who is the monster at the end of the book in this episode?
Grover. So for those not listening from the United States, there's a very well-known children's book with a Sesame Street Muppet called Grover, and it's very silly and cute, and maybe we'll link it in the description. But the entire book, Grover is afraid because he has been told that there's a monster at the end of the book and is trying to prevent you from turning pages, because if you turn pages, we're going to get the end and we're going to have to face the monster. And at the end of the book, it's revealed that Grover, who is known on Sesame to be a monster, was the monster at the end of the book, and he didn't need to be scared all this time. So the entire episode, we're told that Lilith is going to be at the end of the book, and we spend the entire episode with Dean trying to avoid a confrontation with Lilith. So you're meant to think that Lilith is the monster at the end of the book. But then on my first watch, we got Zachariah who threatens to kill Chuck, and the first watch through was like, oh no, switcheroo, Zachariah was actually the monster at the end of the book. But no!
But wait, there's more.
Not the last. But wait, there's more! Zachariah is not the last thing on the screen. The last person on the screen is Chuck, and we fade to black. And I have to assume that was by design. We start and end with Chuck on screen.
So if we're going with the, Rover being at the beginning of the book, trying to not get you to the end of the book.
Right? Chuck's the narrator. Chuck is Grover. Grover was the monster all along.
And
so is Chuck.
It's true. It all turns out to be true. Like, Chuck is he's at the end. He's the last. The thing is, he was supposed to be the last monster. Right?
Right?
He was. Let's just do it because it's gonna happen. He was supposed to be the last monster. He was supposed to be the last. He was supposed to be. He's supposed to be the last, guys, and
he was, because there was no
19 episodes. There was
20.
19 episodes, Amy. I don't know what you're talking about.
What a weird number to end a series on, but okay, go off, I guess. I mean, COVID happened, so I guess they never did that 20th episode they were planning. It's a real shame we never know what happens in it.
And interesting how 19 was actually a two-parter, and there was all this extra stuff in it. The things that make me insane about Supernatural are things like having a visual joke in season 4 that doesn't pay off until 11 seasons later.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a bigger deal that it was the beginning of Free Will, and Cass being the beginning of Free Will paying off in 15-17.
Yeah,
because so many times in this show going forward, like from here on out, God interferes and saves Castiel. Because it was interesting. Because Cass is the only one who did things that Chuck didn't write, and it was too interesting to let that go. And so he keeps bringing Cass back.
I mean, Cass is the embodiment of a wild card. Like, he literally doesn't know what's going to happen with him. So that's why he keeps him around until it's not convenient to anymore. Right? Because I want to end the book. And you keep
messing up the ending.
Yeah. There's so much. I mean, this last scene with Zachariah, I think it's difficult to bring it into the like Chuck is God theory. I don't know how you feel about that, because the way he talks down to him so much, and he just lets him, first of all, which is quite funny. We know God has a huge ego. Mm-hmm. And also talking about, like, he says to Zachariah about warning Sam and Dean, like, is that just a performance for Zachariah? But, like, why say it otherwise? And what has he seen? Up to the end of season 5?
I mean, it's supposed to be, I think, the apocalypse, so yes, yeah. Season 5.
So did he just watch himself go through the end?
But also, on the subject of ego and not letting Zachariah talk to him this way, right? Mm. That's what you mean.
Yeah.
Didn't he write this scene?
I mean, yeah.
He wants to be dramatic.
But would he have written this scene? Or does it not matter that Lilith got away in this sense and that this can still go on? Like, or is he just reframing the story now?
Right. That's a really good point, and I see where you're going. How long does it take Chuck to get the narrative back on track after Cass has, like, messed it up? How long does it...
What?
So...
Did anything actually get messed up in this episode?
I think it did. I do. I think that like this was supposed to end a different way than it did, and I think that Cass messed it up by interfering and bringing the whole Archangel like into this situation. I do honestly think it's supposed to end a different way. So if that's true, just go with me on this. How long does it take for Chuck to get it back where he wants it to be? I'm confusing myself, but it has to be true that Cass disrupts the story and affects events, because otherwise free will is an illusion in Supernatural.
Well, 20 didn't exist. But this season ends, I think, still the way that Chuck wanted it to. But then he interferes, moves into the airplane and brings Cass back.
Yeah. What we're saying is, like, did Chuck write this scene with Zachariah, or is this part of getting the story back on track? Are there things that are happening to him now that he's not expecting to happen until he can kind of steer it back into the direction he wants it to?
I'm confused now. Are you saying he's the prophet or the writer?
You can be both. You can be one subconsciously, I think. This is the...
Okay. Now I understand where you were.
Yeah. I mean, I'm overcomplicating with the whole Chuck Prophet thing. I mean, obviously they didn't know at this point that they were going to make him God, so that's why we have this little thing with Zachariah, and it's just pertaining to, there's an apocalypse coming, guys, be scared, watch our season finale.
So what happened in Chuck's vision that was so bad that he had to warn Sam and Dean about? Like, what? Because yes, the apocalypse is bad, but because the apocalypse isn't happening right this second. Right, there's stuff that still needs to happen before it gets there. So we have that episode where we see the future, where Sam accepted Lucifer, right? Because they know the apocalypse is coming. So what is it that he saw that is so bad?
The season finale.
Yeah, I think I that's what I was thinking too. Like, the fact that, as far as he knows, Chuck's left them with Samuel like gun-ho, gonna still kill Lilith. Actually, that's all just playing into their hands and then bringing about the apocalypse. So, like, if he warned them of, hey, maybe don't kill Lilith, like, he could stop the apocalypse. That was how I thought it. But, like, I mean, just the whole thing. The whole thing is just a bit terrible.
I mean, of course, yeah. The apocalypse generally bad.
He's trying to warn them about changing channels. Because actually Chuck didn't really like that episode very much.
Well, because it's his problem child who did it.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to add?
No, this episode hurts my brain.
Yeah.
And on a rewatch, it's worse.
Yes.
0 out of 10. Don't recommend it. Apart from the side eye that Cass gives Dean. That's 11
so
out of 10. Yeah.
Side eye.
But so next week we're going to be talking about Jump the Shark, which kind of feels like it's the wrong writing device. I feel like it was more of an ex machina, but all right.
Yeah.
Or Deus Ex Machina.
If anything, this episode jumped the shark.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it should be a good one. We'll meet Adam, the long lost brother that then also gets forgotten for just as long as he's been alive.
We should have had more of him.
I love the fact that Jake Abel got so into his character.
Right.
I know.
That, like, it's wild. It's wild.
He got forgotten about longer, apparently because of his agent.
Oh.
Did you hear this? This was the one con I went to.
No.
Apparently, Supernatural called his agent to get him on the show, and his agent asked for so much money that they were like, all right, we'll keep going without him. Which explains, because I've been going nuts, there's a line in season 10, which is when they bring Chuck back. And they're like, oh, that's Adam. He's their other brother who's locked in the cage with Lucifer. And then they just drop it for four more years. So I think they were gearing up to end the show in like season 11. They were doing the whole storyline we saw then.
It was a running joke as well at that point that they'd forgotten about the third brother. Like,
amongst fans, yeah.
Yeah, amongst fans as well.
Oh,
so,
that's actually perfect placement in fanfiction
yeah,
then.
It
That's
really
funny.
is, yeah. I think Chuck episodes from now on are just going to be like...
Yeah, mind-blowing.
Yeah, because...
Too much. There's too much baggage.
Yeah, too many daddy issues.
Yep.
And, yeah, there are moments coming up in 22 that I think of, like, I thought were part of this episode. I think I just jumble it all up into one.
There's a problem with season 4, season 5 generally, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
We'll get some mooshed together.
Especially if you watched on Netflix rather than live.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It
Which
just
I
flow.
definitely did.
Okay, I mean, Leanna, unless you have anything else to add, let's thank Charlie for coming on to this episode.
Thank you for having me.
I know it's been super fun, and I feel like
we can be crazy about this together.
that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And I feel like we righted some wrongs. I don't know what those wrongs were, but like it just, I don't know. My brain feels looser. It was all tied in a big Chuck knot, and like it maybe hasn't helped, but it feels slightly like started.
So
to
the clouds have parted.
Yeah.
I'm still stuck here. But things have gotten a little bit brighter for a moment.
Yes. At the end of the episode, we would like to thank Pixel Agora for his wonderful art on our podcast. If you would like to purchase that art, you can go to our Redbubble and buy it on a tea towel. That's what I'm plugging this week. Some of the profits from those sales go back to the artist, of course. If you would like to discuss this episode with us and help me understand where you stand on the Chuck God Prophet thing, you can find us on Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Ko-fi as Escaping Purgatory Podcast, or on Twitter as just Escaping Podcast. And I know that Charlie is also very active on social media, so if you'd like to go discuss it with her, you can find her at...
On Tumblr at Dean Was Always By, and Twitter at Dean Wasabi's. And also, if you would like to play a supernatural-themed Wordle game, you can play that at supportal.netlify.app, and I will post that link on social media as well.
So I think we'll probably put up some polls as to whether or not you think Chuck was a prophet all along, or a god all along, or both. So please let us know what you think, and we'll tell you the results when we feel like we have enough of them.
Okay. So on our trip this week in Purgatory, we found another friend. We found our old friend, and they brought a rather disturbing book with them, which we thoroughly discussed and hurt our brains over. So we think we're just going to leave her here. We're going to carry on, and maybe we'll run into her again. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you leaving the book there, or are you leaving me there?
We're leaving you there. You hurt our brains.